When you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind back.
If a generalized black woman is doing this and being this, that is that is irresponsible.
No,
when you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind
showing
back.
me,
Black and proud. Claim your Africanness, black and proud.
I think that if
when you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind back.
a page,
what is the status of people with half FBA?
I'm telling you. When you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind back.
That's why I was laughing, because
Black and proud. Claim your Africanness, black and
I'm not saying the framework doesn't do a thing, but
become a part of it.
We've been
Embrace
forward
it.
to black men
Become a
being the
part of it.
masters, being
Embrace
in
it.
control. We
Become a part of it.
Only
Embrace it.
That those to me one of the
Become a
best
part
stories I've
of
ever
it.
heard.
Embrace it. When you claim your
have
Africanness, you're
mastered
going to get your mind
that
back.
mental growth takes
Black
place.
and
You've
proud.
been
Claim your
misled by
Africanness,
leadership,
black
for
and
instance,
proud.
that
I'm
think
telling
you
you.
can consume.
When you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind back. Black and proud. Claim your Africanness. Black and proud. I'm telling you.
peace and power, family. Dr. Dahl back up in the building. It's been a while. Been a while, family. Make sure you let everybody know. It's going to be a real excellent. It's going to be a passionate. It's going to be a deep. It's going to be a emotionally challenging but regulated conversation today. I'm not talking about for y'all but me personally. I'm talking about for all of us, right? I got a special guest in the House of Day family who's no stranger to the airways, but maybe strangers to some of you. But I had this dear brother, Baba, on the show some weeks ago. Not him, but his video as I was analyzing it as it pertains to some of the frameworks that we see and we have in our community and some of the struggle that people have with me around actually identifying those frameworks, which I would argue aren't necessarily for us, definitely not by us. And even if we cloak them in black, they just cloaked in black. You know what I'm saying? So as we continue, as we proceed to give you what you need, just make sure you like, share this video. Make sure you bring the family up in the building. Make sure you chit chat. You let us know you're in the house. So today's discussion, I'm gonna get right to it. I'm gonna get right at it, And for those who come in, y'all gonna have to push rewind because time is valuable and all that type of thing. But again, today's show is entitled Dr. Cleo Manago, Race First Models in Sexuality and Gender, the Trauma Trance. So, family, we're going to talk about some things. Y'all know I've been having these conversations, and they've been kind of, they've been triggering for folk. Let's just say that. They've been triggering for folk. I think I reached out to Dr. Cleo Manago maybe 2-3 weeks ago and asked if he would come on, and he said yes, and here he is. So, Dr. Manago, again, the title is Race First Models of Sexuality and Gender, the Trauma Trance. And we'll get into it. So again, Race First Models of Sexuality and Gender, the Trauma Trance. Tell the people, talk to the family, tell them, I always ask this question, I frame it this way all the time. Tell the people why you are essential to this conversation. In other words, let them know a little bit about you.
Okay. Why am I essential? Well, that's for other people to. That's what
just pull the mic back to you.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Is we cool now?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
That's for other people to say whether I'm essential or not.
Okay.
I believe in everything I say, and it's essentially important to me in terms of black healing and human advancement. But my name is Cleo Manago. I prefer being called Cleo. That's what my mama called me. And I am a lot of things. I'm an anthropologist. I'm a behaviorist. I've been doing work on behalf of human development in communities, particularly people of African descent, for going on 50 years. And here I am.
How many years?
Over 50 years.
Over 50.
And I'm almost 70. And right now, I'm the CEO of the Pride Center of Maryland, located in Baltimore. And I think it's important for me to start off with that because I get the feeling that this is going to be a particularly black conversation. And when you look like me, and when you have a reputation that precedes you, as I do, that's basically centered in blackness, people assume that that's all you know and that's all you do. Now, it's definitely my most essential and favorite place to be and discuss, but I got to say what I'm getting ready to say to make the record clear. I run the Pride Center of Maryland, which serves everybody who's part of the so-called sexual and gender minority canvas or spectrum, and allies, which is a lot of people. And on my staff are people who are white, black, Asian, Latino, women, gender diverse, male, the whole spectrum, because that's who the agency is for, that whole spectrum that I described. However, in the midst of doing work that invites a diverse community and that represents a diverse community simultaneously, I do what I call retroactive black reparative work. Because even in Baltimore, most of the people that tend to have the need for what we provide tend to look like us because that's the majority population. And the same agency that I happen to be the leader of right now historically neglected black folks. So I'm doing compensatory work to ensure that never happens again, at least on my watch. And I want to make sure people understand that while my conversation today will be particularly black, my charge as a CEO is particularly, to use a word that some of us don't even like, multicultural.
What did you say particularly that you don't
a word that some of us don't particularly like, which is multicultural.
Well, who are some of us?
And the reason I say that, because a lot of multicultural frameworks are really a rainbow flavored whiteness. And it's about making sure that a multiple of people adapt or become less threatening to people who are called white. It's not really a autonomous conversation around diverse autonomy and being authentically what you are outside of the so-called dominant culture. But I use the word dominating culture. Now that you asked me, but I want to be clear with my terminology. I use the word dominating culture, not dominant culture, because black dominant in this society is just as pervasive as their domination. So I say white dominating, not white dominant. Are we getting it?
Yeah.
Because black people's essence and culture and flavor and rhythms and language and creativity is in everything, including in the midst of white dominating phenomena.
Yeah.
So language is very important to me, which I might even get in your nerves with during this conversation because language is so specific to me and I use it very intentionally.
You know, actually, I have a question around that, and I do want you to get on our nerves about it.
Okay.
You know, so and just to kind of appreciate that, I appreciate, you know, you giving us a little background of all the work, a little of what you do. I'm almost led to ask you, what are your thoughts about the word multicultural? What before I really get into, you know what, let me do it like this. I'll ask you that, but I'll say why I reached out to you to have this conversation. And this is not the first time I've reached out to you. Initially, I've heard of you. Actually, I was presenting for the ABSI. Not ABSI. The Association of Black Social Workers. Okay. I was doing a presentation. This is probably like 4 years ago, I think. And you were like the keynote, I believe. It was like a virtual. I think we were in the middle of COVID or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know, you so in such demand, you forget about all these keynote opportunities.
A lot of them.
Yeah, you know, you could throw some my way, especially if they have honorariums. if they have honorariums, you know, you can throw them my way.
I'll think of you, I promise.
Okay. I can be multicultural but black first. So, and you spoke about the trauma trance, and after listening to you speak about this idea, this trauma trance, I said that was intense. You know, I was like, that was intense. And this is coming from a black revolution, black power type of brother. You know what I mean? But who's been touched, I say, by multiculturalism, and frameworks counseling models and psychological theories and ways of being and ways of understanding the world through very liberal, quote unquote, progressive type of lenses. You know, but listening to that, it was intense, you know, especially from this very, now, I was trained more in the counseling world. Now, they're very liberal. I think they're like they're the liberalists of the mental health community. I would kind of argue that a bit, you know.
Now, should we define liberal? You think everybody understands
what
we mean?
Go ahead.
No, you use the term.
Oh, what I mean by liberal, it's layered in many ways. But the way that I'm specifically speaking about it now, I'm talking about those who have a politic that it's so-called multicultural. They don't necessarily think there's they don't want like change. They do want change, but okay. What was I saying? I was saying something about liberal as far as my training.
Yes.
So okay. So when I see the liberal framework, it becomes multicultural, and basically it has you looking at all these different intersections. Intersectionality becomes your primary lens, even if you don't even realize it. It's like it segments you into all these pieces. Like, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm gay, I'm short, I'm bisexual, I'm same gender loving, I'm heterosexual, I'm a gendered, non-gendered, I'm tall, whatever. It's like all these different ways of looking at the world and experiencing the world, but then they create this idea that they oppress people or oppress identities, which they also identify as cultures. These are cultures that, and they conflate those with identities, and they also call it what's that term they always use? They use the term what is that term? It's slipping me right now. I teach the class, by the way. It's called diversity.
Diversity.
And then being diverse is more essential than anything that is race first. That's kind of how it's been taught to me. Not that they say that.
Right.
In many ways, they say race is essential, but they put race in this spectrum equal and parallel to every other identity.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm oppressed because I'm black. I'm oppressed because I'm a woman. I'm oppressed because I'm a gay man or not heterosexual men. They never oppress, even if they're black. So it's kind of like this very liberal, meaning that there's no need for rules. It's this your individual identity is more essential than the group. I don't know if
I hear you.
Does that make?
Yeah, and a lot of the people that lead this paradigm are white.
Yeah.
And what the multicultural movement, if you will, or the diversity movement tends to do is give an opportunity for people who are white or white adjacent to hear the narratives of other people without, in real clear terms, identifying the hegemonic white contamination that's amidst it all. There's no disassociation from that. A lot of this whole paradigm, linguistically in almost all terms, is sitting on top of a oppressive white frame of reference that is not in the critique. And that's not in, like, for example, you may have heard people say that they don't want you to use the word homosexual anymore, use the word gay. But gay came out of a lily white, male, and racist framework.
Yeah.
But you don't supposed to say that part because it's an oppressed group.
Yeah.
Or feminism, particularly back in the day, it was a bunch of white women justifiably critiquing male domination and oppression, but they weren't critiquing their racism.
Right.
So that wasn't resolved. So Susan B. Anthony and the rest of the people that was frameworking that were not looking at their so-called privilege because they're too busy being oppressed women. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I remember back in the day, and you didn't ask me about this, it might sound tangential, but one of my favorite stories is when Fannie Lou Hamer, sometimes when some of the best of us become well known, they try to recruit.
Yeah.
Like they did Baldwin and so many people.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to recruit Fannie Lou Hamer, the feminist movement, because she was a strong black woman. And she said, no, y'all not separate me from my man. I love my man. And I want my I think she said he wear a size 13 shoe. She brought up a shoe size for some reason. And she said, I'm going to be with my man. So I'm not joining this movement. Now I'm badly paraphrasing her, but you can find this quote online when Fannie Lou Hamer rejects the feminist movement.
I appreciate that. So the reason why I initially reached out to you is due to what I've noticed in academia. Of course, Queen had suggested that I sit with you after you had a strong critique of me, and I said I ain't sitting with that.
You call me a what? You call me a...
I ain't sit with that dude. No, I told her what I really did tell her is I didn't want to meet with you and it be
antagonistic.
Yes,
it wouldn't have been. No, by the way, but yeah.
On that be the introduction on this difference, right?
Right, but we wouldn't have been antagonistic.
But after researching you more, I realized that you are really you regulate and you speak calmly. And even that though can become intimidating. You know what I mean to people. I've heard I've heard your phone conversation with Dr. Umar Johnson. I've heard you on other platforms, and you kept very calm. And then I also began to listen to the way that you articulate yourself, and I realized that it takes a lot of empathy and understanding and self-assuredness to actually, I've heard you say in the video, be who you are in the world, and also be able to see the dynamics that's going on in our community. So I reached out to you after really looking into your frameworks a bit more, because in my classes, what I realized is that most of my students are women or females, or biologically born female, right? And I realized that they struggle with race-first frameworks. They struggle with African-centered frameworks. They struggle with the idea of Pan-Africanism. And I'm saying that this has nothing to do with gender orientation.
Well, it does. It doesn't, in fact, as a neutral palette, but the frame of reference to symbolism and a lot of the mouthpieces have been male.
Have been male?
Have been male.
Tell me more.
Well, try to keep this simple. Most of it's a fact that the Western world, which is where we live, the farther back you go, is profoundly patriarchal.
Yeah.
And profoundly oppressive and silencing of women. I mean, women got a chance to vote before black men got a chance to vote in this country. However, it was dangerous for the black men to vote because they were hung and killed and weren't allowed to go in terms of males being allowed to vote before women in this country.
Yeah.
So I say that to say that women have experienced not only, in some cases, rape, trauma, social systematic repression, blah, blah, blah. A lot of black men, in reaction to castration, dehumanization, not being considered men in a patriarchal context, have overdone it and overcompensated. And sometimes that's been violent or abusive. Not with the intention to wake up in the morning and be abusive, but people are acting out because they've been ran crazy by monsters. So the desire to be relevant and the perpetual assumption of irrelevance makes people defensive and overreact. And that occurring in a patriarchal culture allowed more males to show up with voice. That's why Sojourner Truth said, what did she say? Am I a woman? Was that what she said?
Ain't I a woman?
Ain't I a woman? Because women were being marginalized. But where some black women, and you weren't asking about this, but it's relevant, where some black women get caught up at why they defend having seen the world as unsafe, is that parallel black men were extremely unsafe. and castrated and murdered, and to this very day have limited lifespans compared to every other group in this country.
Yeah.
So I said a lot, but I'm going to get to the point of saying that when you talk about Pan-Africanism, you talk about race 1st. These symbols of these people are of this movement is people like Malcolm X, not his wife. It's people like all the people that have come up and been the Huey Newton, etc. It's been mostly men. So the assumption that some women have, sometimes based on reality, is that I'm not going to be treated like that. Allowed to step up, allowed to be the symbol of a movement, allowed to be as present in terms of being important as males. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because that's true. Now, again, what I want to make sure that the audience understands, because people keep forgetting that black men were being tortured simultaneously and being castrated simultaneously.
Right.
And while they try to adapt to a patriarchal language, just like most of us know nothing but English, not by choice. Just like most of the men know nothing but a dysfunctional, fractured version of what a man's supposed to be, because that's what the paradigm tells us. That's all they know. So they just acting out in response to what they've been told, which has been a real bad version of being a male.
Yeah.
That women have been affected by, men too, equally in my opinion. But while men were being abused, they still had the semblance of what appeared to be relative power. I'm talking about black men now. The semblance. I don't mean it's real. Because Massa was a man. And that looks like male privilege.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
No, I get that.
Massa was a man, and at least when it came to in public, it was, and when rape occurred, it was women being raped. Now, what people don't want to admit, that a lot of men were being raped too, but it was not in public.
No, so I get what you're saying, and I think I was specifically saying the reason why I reached out to you was because I see the difficulty in the consideration of different Pan-African and African-centered lenses, and that not being tied exclusively to one's sexual, and I'll add gender, because you're speaking about gender, sexual and gender orientation, because the thing is, what essentially I am saying is that there's a certain there's certain frameworks that are taught in schools, and lots of times I say feminism, and I want to be very clear. I'm talking about mainstream feminism and intersectionality, because recently people are saying, well, what about this feminism? What about that feminism? I can't know about all the feminism, but I do know the feminisms I'm speaking about when I'm talking about that which is taught in academia. So I don't even understand why that becomes the question, because typically I say intersectional feminism, but I didn't even put a word in front of it. I will say black feminism as well, because I also say even those of us in the community that don't really realize that the models and frameworks they were utilizing, because it seeps out of academia. The ideas, we don't know where these ideas come from. But in essence, I think I didn't quite understand why they were struggling with these particular race first
Because
politics.
they see it as another patriarchal frame.
That's it.
That's why I went through with all that stuff I just said about
Yes, sir.
who shows up, who gets the microphone,
Yeah.
and how sometimes in a patriarchal culture, which taught us everything, we replicate white patriarchy, which puts men first. So black men in some cases, attempt to replicate the language they know, because that's the dominating language is men first. So even though in the black community there was much more nuance, because sometimes women were first, often running the house, not taking no stuff, and having a whole nother attitude toward men naturally or organically than what white women were being trained to do. I mean, Big Mama was doing all kinds of stuff that there was no white Big Mamas, if you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
But my point, so I won't lose in all this talk, is that the resistance to everything you mentioned is because the assumption is that a man's going to be leading it. And they resent that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not based on delusion. The society is patriarchal, and it sits up a framework where that's often the outcome.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily by the black men's intentional design. They're just replicating what they know.
So it becomes more, from my understanding, it becomes more of a gender first or sexual orientation first type of perspective. And I say that because what kind of happens is it's almost like, and I'll tell you, to add on to what you're saying, it becomes more of, if I find something in African Senate models that I don't agree with, then I'll just do away with it. Although I can accept ideas of feminism and LGBTQ plus, and there's plenty of things I don't agree with, but I'll hold on to those things, and I'm trying to figure out, make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself. But I do, I mean, but you could touch on that. Yeah, I mean,
There's another layer here which almost never gets talked about, and people may disagree with this, but there's some anti-blackness going on too. I'm talking about among black people now. The visceral reaction to race first, Pan-Africanists. There's an unconscious distrust of black only in terms of how it's interpreted, or a lot of people, as you heard me say before, probably others heard me say, is that a lot of us think, and I've actually tested this for years in my talks. What's the opposite of pro-black? Anti-white. The opposite of pro-black is anti-black. But anti-blackness is abstracted because we don't want whiteness. Does not want that resolved. We want anti-whiteness resolved. So we allow that illogical situation of pro-black means anti-white, but that don't make no sense. If you pro-abortion, you're anti-abortion. Not pro-abortion or anti-cigars. You know what I'm saying? It's you keep it in the same framework, and pro-black and anti-black are the opposites, not pro-black and anti-white. But we're trained to guard whiteness at all costs, and it's not a conscientious knowing. And black men are the fundamental enemy of whiteness, because the people creating the paradigm of resistance to us. I mean, there's a quote by Napoleon. I wish we could find it like right now. There's a quote by Napoleon. I don't know by heart, but Napoleon basically says, and y'all look for this quote. He says, "It's not about money. I just don't want black people to be successful." Napoleon said that. I just want to block black progress on planet Earth. I can't handle the idea of it's like the fear of a black planet metaphor that you've heard before. That's real. That's real. And the primary victim of that fear is black males, which is where all the castrations come from. But all that to say is that, getting back to your question about why there's resistance to pro-blackness and race first and Pan-African, is because of two things, in my opinion. One is the assumption of male leadership, maleness, and female dismissiveness. And one is, I don't trust it because it's black.
So could you say those three again? Is
one issue here is that if it's Pan-African or race first, it's likely going to be male-led and female secondary.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And then there's also the problem that we don't trust blackness.
Yeah.
And it's unconscious. It's not necessarily a conscious thought. That's why I talk about the trauma trance all the time, because the trauma trance is a descriptor of the fact that we're not fully conscious, we're not fully present, we're not fully aware. We're living on the tip of our psyche, which is ran by whiteness. And in some cases, patriarchy. And in some cases, and pardon me for the controversy, some cases, toxic femininity.
So what I've run into is, not necessarily in my class, my students love me.
Of course they do.
You've been in my class, right?
Yes, I have.
And I challenged them, right? And they don't even have to agree with me, but they love me.
And I think they appreciate you. I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is relative. This is important. They appreciate you because you relax, breathe, and don't have a visceral reaction to disagreement and opposite perspective, even if they're visceral. Because I know for me, you talk about how calm I was. Well, calm is a strategy.
Yeah.
It ain't just something to do.
Yeah.
I want to be effective.
Absolutely.
And I want people to listen, and I want them to, and I want to listen to them. So I think we have that in common. I think I've witnessed you in action, and no matter, they say, like, in your mind you might go, this shit is crazy, but in your mind they'll never know because it's not effective or helpful to have that reaction. Plus, I think you want to be fair.
Say the last piece.
I think you want to be fair.
Absolutely, and yeah, because I can turn up, but what the point is, will that be effective?
Exactly.
Because my entire point is to bring us together, and it's very difficult for us sometimes to hear both sides of all situations. Like you've kind of been very delicate in your approach to first and foremost understanding why our sisters perhaps experience certain threat to certain frameworks. And I wasn't even just talking about sisters in general, but I'm talking about sisters and also male students as well, because they also have been trained in these frameworks, right? And I also, when I say sexual orientation, I was speaking about sexual orientation, not because, and I said it doesn't have to do with sexual orientation exclusively, because a person can be considered, or they can identify straight, but they still identify with these frameworks from the LGBTQ plus community, the feminist mainstream feminism. Mainstream feminism. I'm not talking about all the other pockets, but I will challenge the fact maybe we need to choose and get another name or something, because what it would be like if I say I'm a black patriarchist and black patriarchists take care of their women and their children.
Our sister did come up with womanist, Alice Walker. But anyway, let's
you
continue.
You have womanist, Africana womanism, and so anything becomes. I think you're right and exact when you say that it becomes an in the minds patriarchal, and I understand some of it as well. I even understand some of it, but again, they will cling on to those white models.
But they consider them sanctuaries, not white models.
Go ahead. They don't consider. They consider them sanctuaries.
They consider them sanctuaries, and what I mean by that is, it's painful, and it's usually based on a painful experience for a person, be they a same-gender loving person or a woman, to have this bristle around something that will likely be male-led and exclude them, or heterosexual male and exclude them. So they need relief. They still need affirmation.
Got you.
They still need some place to go to heal and feel like they're being heard, and they're less in danger. And unfortunately, and it's a big unfortunate, they go to white supremacist frameworks that pose as sanctuaries that are anti-black, but anti-black is the norm. So there's less of a visceral reaction to the norm. And we use the word N-word all the time. N-word is a horrific, horrible, psychologically destructive, injurious word. We use it all the time, all day long. And we rarely hear hunky or cracker, all those, because we protect whiteness at all costs. And we've been trained to racialize and dehumanize black people. That's a whole other conversation, but it's relevant in terms of me making my point. But black people wanting relief. I can't tell you how many homosexual or gay identified black men and women who are mad at the black community for not accepting them, and they feel tortured, they feel tormented, and they want sanctuary. And the only place they see what sanctuary is where there's a rainbow flag, and there's my sanctuary. So they ignore the blatant racism and dehumanization and dismissiveness of their blackness, because they've dismissed their blackness too. So they resonate with that tendency, but it's not conscious. That's why I call it a trance. It's not. They're not getting up on Thursday and say I'm gonna be schizophrenic and anti-black and run to the gay community for sanctuary. They're trying to survive without all the building blocks being identified. They're going where they can go because LGBTQ and feminism are part of the cultural framework. I mean, it's way. For example, same-gender loving, which people all over the world call themselves, is still nowhere near in terms of iconography is gay and lesbian, because that's the hegemony. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So people go into poisonous levels of hegemony or white power and control or frameworks, sanctuary, when they feel like there's a gap in safety among the black community.
I think that's so important, and I think I appreciate just the breakdown. You said, I wrote a note. You said is with the anti-black is the norm.
It is.
And that right there was, to me, that's very profound. Like, we're used to being anti-black. So I even in that anti-blackness in these other movements or models or frameworks, I'm comfortable with that.
Not comfortable, familiar. There's
Fam-
a difference. Because comfortable people don't have a substance abuse problem or a diabetes problem or a disproportionate health and well-being challenge while just being alive in their environment. So they go to familiar places. Comfort. When you're comfortable, you don't need anesthesia.
Well, I mean, I agree with you in terminology to some degree, but there's sometimes people find comfort in chaos.
Well, we should debate that at some point because I don't think they do. I think they find familiarity.
Well,
and
yeah,
and
I
they
think
expect it, but they're not comfortable.
no, I get what you're saying. I agree actually. I agree.
We wouldn't
But-
have all these challenges that we have with mental health and substance use and suicide, which yourself is going through the roof again. It always was on top
Well,
of the roof.
I
and I
mean,
was going through it
hold
because
on.
these are not comfortable people.
Hold up, hold up. I think I agree with you, but I also I follow you. But I think it's how we define it, right? And what I mean is like it's familiar, right? I can go with that. But I also can go with comfort just for the fact that okay, let me it's more comfortable than that which they're not familiar with. So, I mean, I can get with it because I've seen people who are anxious. They're not comfortable, as you're saying, right?
Uncomfortable.
But they feel much more comfortable in that anxiety than when you work with them and they're no longer anxious. They feel major discomfort in that, and they look for that comfort in the anxiety. But I agree with you holistically. I think it's kind of like how we define the words. But let me get to your frameworks. I want to know more about your frameworks, the name of them. I do know SGL, same gender loving framework. I've heard of that. I have some. Could you tell me a little bit about that and the other? I think you have like a critical.
CTCA, critical thinking.
Yeah, could you tell us about that?
Critical CTCA or
Both.
okay. CTCA stands for Critical Thinking and Culture Affirmation, and it's inspired by solutions to the Trauma Trance. And it also addresses, darn it, I'm forgetting things I say every day, reasoning, faulty reasoning, and what I call exemplary reasoning. Because there's people that you've met who can break something down, even if you're naive, very impressively. And well, I'll use a phraseology that I don't use in my life. I'm using it to make a point. I don't say this phrase ever. But the terms coming from black people saying niggas ain't shit. That terminology is an example of faulty reasoning and self-deprecation. Because first of all, you call yourself and everybody, somebody black, that word, number one, and you're saying they're less valuable than excrement. And you're also talk about what you are. And you've seen people say that with gusto, say it with aplomb, that phraseology, haven't you? And it's like, that's faulty reasoning. And it's allowed to fester in a trauma trance because of a lack of analysis. Because you cannot be in a trance and have deep, authentic analysis. So my point is that you can critically think inside of a faulty reasoning framework. It's like you can have a logical conclusion about something, but it's still wrong because the whole frame of reference is just not constructive. So what culture affirmation does, which is in this instance in most of my work, it's a affirmation, a discovery of and a learning about black affirmation and positive things about being black human beings, historically, behaviorally, in all kinds of different ways that are positive and real and true and undeniable. Now, if you're in a trauma trance and I give you advice on something that could help you and you're too unclear or unfocused to hear it because you're questioning your worth, my advice in most cases won't be synthesized or internalized. But if I do trance breaking work and break the trance and get you to become a critical thinker and aware of how you've come to be and the things that you have learned that are anti-black that keeps you in the trauma trance, help when I break the trance, and then we do the reparative work, the culture affirmation, because you're awake now. For example, Well, I'm always apprehensive to give some of the exercises that we do because I want people to come to the course and experience the exercises. So I'm trying to think of something. Okay, in Los Angeles we had a project called Watu Wajua. Watu Wajua stands for Children of the Sun in Swahili, and it was a CTCA or critical thinking course for children who are between the ages of 4 and 15. One of the exercises that we had them do. Now, again, getting back to strategy, similar to we talked before, my team is trained to have a flat or loving demeanor. No matter how crazy and insane what's going on in the room or how anti-black and offensive and heartbreaking it is, we still have to make sure we're creating a palette of non-judgment and harmony.
Yeah.
And that's part of the strategy. So we'll ask the young people to bring back some books or comic books or young people's phenomena, collateral, if you will, that you like, and bring it to the class. In most cases, the stuff that they are bringing to the class is affirming whiteness. You know, still white in the dwarves, and these days there's some more contemporary versions of that, but almost none of it affirms them. Or you might have heard of the more recent versions of the doll test, where from the 30s until now, it's the same outcome. The majority of the black children who take those tests choose the white doll as better than black, as good, as what they think is good. It's the same thing. That's faulty reasoning. When you're black and you choose the white doll, that's not exemplary reasoning. That's faulty reasoning, and that's trauma trance based. So instead of judging them and going, "You hate yourself," and all this kind of stuff, we ask them questions like, "Tell us in as specific ways that you can why the white doll is better." And they'll say in some cases, because it's white. And you ask them, then why is the black doll worse? Because it's black. And the question is, this is the trance breaking strategy here. Why? And to make a long story short, or a long story shorter, they don't know why. Because they're in the trauma trance. They're in the white supremacist-induced trauma trance that teaches them to be anti-black and white accommodating. And they've never thought about it. And they've heard niggas ain't shit. Sit your black ass down. Or what I heard in a Target store recently, boy, to a 3-year-old child, if you don't get your black ass over here, I'm going to beat the black off you. You've heard all these phraseology in passing at Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
And these are injurious phraseologies that are anti-black. And then you hear the terms like fair skin, which implies that being lighter is fair and being black is unfair.
Absolutely.
And there's tons and tons of anti-black, white accommodating phraseology that hypnotizes us into an anti-black trauma trance that we don't know we're in.
Yeah.
So my work through CTCA, trust me, when we get finished with the strategies that are involved in the model, and we don't judge nobody, we put it in context. Well, and I'm making some things simpler because of time. The bottom line is that how could you not be what you are, which is not helpful to you under the circumstances? And then we break down the circumstances, and what we don't do is tell them how to think. We tell them to think. And we create a palette where they go, damn. And they look at the world in a different way. Thank goodness. From that day on, one of the sisters are going to help me hate me when I say this. But one of the many contemporary versions of trauma trance, normalized anti-blackness is black women's hair in too many cases these days. And you know what I'm talking about. They know what I'm talking about. That what we do with what sisters are doing with their hair, well, somebody else's hair.
What are you talking about? I think I know what you're talking about.
Well, there's a sister whose music I love. What's her name? She did a album called Education. What's her name?
Lauryn Hill.
Lauryn Hill. Lauryn Hill talked about this in one of her songs about wearing European hairstyles and basically denying your African or black organic state and hiding it under blonde hair. You've seen that before.
Yeah.
Among other colors.
Absolutely.
And it's not just fashion, because like I say, when I argue lovingly with these angry and resentful people, I say If it was simply fashion, there would be as many afros on whites or the equivalent, like dreads, as there is weaves on black women. But it's out of balance.
Yeah.
It's way more black women copying white hair than white women copying black hair. So it's not just a fashion statement, it's a consequence. You know what I mean by consequence?
A consequence of the environment that we.
It's a consequence. It's not fashion.
Yeah.
Fashion does not lean on one prototype.
Mm-hmm.
If it's autonomous, if it's autonomous neutral fashion, if it's going in one direction, it's the impact of the dominating culture's influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the CTCA work, without judgment, simply puts all these truths out there while they're out of the trauma trance and in a critical state, critical thinking way of being with all this information. It's supposed to be in a trance with all this information, because within a trance it don't work.
Yeah.
But if they're clear and their minds are because one thing I like about the workers is that they get hungry. They go, what else? You know what I'm saying? They're just so happy to have the meal, if you will, and so glad to have the revelation.
Yeah.
And so glad to have a different type of sanctuary.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down, the word sanctuary. I think I appreciate that, how you frame that, and it makes it so vivid, that, and then also adding that to the idea that not comfort, but
Familiar.
very familiar, right? Anti-blackness is familiar. Wow.
It's rampant. It's in almost everything. And don't watch television or Prime Video or Netflix. It's just saturated with anti-blackness.
Yeah, I get that, and I do. So I do get that, right?
And our children sit there becoming entranced with popcorn or whatever they're eating, and their parents are entranced. I'm talking about black people and white people too, frankly, but I'm concerned about us right now. But we're just sitting there being poisoned and becoming anti-black with no critical analysis, or we're not even consciously offended. We're offended. That's why we have the health challenges that we have, because we're not comfortable.
Yeah.
That's why we can't come together, if you will, collectively, like the people that voted for Trump did.
Yeah.
And I say that because a lot of people who voted for Trump don't like each other. I'm talking about white people. The gays who voted for Trump, if you will, the lesbian women who voted for Trump, and the women who voted for Trump all wanted to restore symbolic white power. Hopefully it was going to trickle down to sustain systemic white power. They were not confused about what the assignment was. We get confused. It's like, should I be black affirming, or should I be white accommodating? Should I not offend white people and be caught up and worried about that in terms of my decisions, or should I not care about accommodating white people and their feelings, and build my people up and restore them and make sure they're healthy and well? What should I do? Well, people who are not in a trauma trance, they ain't even a question. You can go to Atlanta right now, and there's a huge mall outside of Atlanta that's all Asian businesses. They're not in no trauma trance. They don't have no. They're not confused about what to do for their people.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So are there any consequences to these models that don't put one's blackness at the forefront, from your perspective?
There's a consequence.
Yeah.
That's a rhetorical question. It has to be. Because the consequences are, just read medical surveillance, criminal and FBI surveillance, if you will. Who dies the most, who has the shortest lifespan, who dies the most from premature death. The perpetually already high, always getting higher suicide rate among black men. That's what happens. And the list is longer than that. The perpetual and growing mentality among black people is that loving each other is not the right choice. Loving other people is a better choice. You got more people publicly announcing that who are black than ever. Like I saw a show that as much as I could stomach the other day with his sister very casually. She wasn't even dramatic. She was like, "Oh, I don't. Black men are not in my vortex." And she wasn't embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things that are anti-black, like the N-word, we're not embarrassed because we're too deep into trauma trance to go, "What the hell?" We're in that roller coaster of anti-blackness. But your question, answer your question is almost everything. I mean, there's very few black affirming oases or spaces of pure black divinity and affirmation in the Western world. It might be in your house, you might have an altar, or you might have a library like this. I mean, I find your space of work profoundly black affirming, but I bet you anything this is a special place on this block.
Say it again.
I bet you this is a special place on this block.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the norm on this block.
Yeah.
And this is a predominantly black block.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
and you've heard black people say, "Here we go with this black stuff again."
Yeah.
How many times have you heard an Asian person say, "Here we go with this Asian stuff again"? Or a Jew go, "Here we go with this Jewish stuff again." Or a gay identified person, "Here we go with this gay." You're not going to hear it.
Mm.
But they're not trained to be automatically anti themselves as a norm, as an impulse. The anti-blackness is pervasive, and it's such a norm. I mean, where I work, which is a predominantly black area, my window for my office is near the front of the building. I hear the conversations between black people. They're just steeped in anti-blackness.
I have a question. Have you ever heard of the Funky Geneva?
I'm laughing because you must know that I was on that show.
No.
Yeah, so okay, well you didn't. I was on Funky Deneva's show.
No, because some things have been resurfacing lately, but he's saying that black men are the problems to everybody. Black cis heteronormative men.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a short story if you don't mind. That kind of embodies my perspective on that. A very well-known black, I'm gonna call him a black pundit, said to me once, black people are the biggest enemy. And this black person has an English last name and an English first name and a German last name. And I said to him, you are named after your enemies. Your name is not Zimbabwe, Nigeria, which is a white word too, by the way. You have a German British name. So how are you gonna call black people your enemy? Your worst enemy. That don't make no sense. You're not supposed to be sitting up here with a British first name and a German last name. And you calling the people who raped you out of your own memory your friends relative to your own people. I said, that don't make no sense. And if I was on Funky Geneva's show, on that show, it would have been a very interesting show because he's not here to defend himself, so I'll just say this. That's ridiculous. First of all, I said this on his show. When I was on there, I said, and this is out of context because he's not here and the show's not here, but I said to him, some of these men that have hurt your feelings, and listen closely, some of these men that have hurt your feelings or put you down for being a homosexual or homosexuals who are disassociating themselves from what they are by battling you because they couldn't be comfortable who they are. You're assuming that they were heterosexual. They weren't having sex in front of you. They were fighting you or doing something that was hurtful to you. But you don't know what their sexuality is. You're assuming that these people were heterosexual. Now, I don't doubt that some of them were. But I know for a fact from research, from participatory research, from observation, that people who are obsessed with this issue and act violently and act out on it, they're struggling with it in many cases. And there's some scientific studies that's been done on that. I don't know them by heart by now because I don't need to study. I already know what the deal is. But you don't know what they are. But the assumption between, like, for example, this might surprise you, but a lot of same-gender loving and gay identified people at first glance assume I'm heterosexual. and I'm not, never have been, don't even know what that's like. I've been the same gender loving person all of my romantic notion and erotic life. But because I'm not like Funky Geneva, who's more feminine than me, who people assume stereotypically is obviously homosexual, I get accused of being heterosexual. So if I walk up to Funky Geneva and say, "You faggot," it's going to be assumed that cis so-called heterosexual man is abusing me because of how people stereotype, including people who are called gay. You understand what I'm saying? So that's a ridiculous. Well, I'm sorry. I'm not practicing my calm strategy right now. That's an unfortunate conclusion because you don't know what these people's sexuality are, and they likely are struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Am I making sense?
No, no, you're making sense. And I have to preface this by saying that I am not saying that my clinical experience or with clients is the same as that which is quantitative or what have you, but there are patterns that show up clinically that support exactly what you're saying. I mean, I've had clients up until yesterday that speak so negative about what some people identify as homosexuality and same gender loving and all this type of thing, but it often comes out that they have been struggling, and it's clear. Sometimes it's very clear.
Clear as a bell.
You know what I'm saying? But they'll come in and talk. They put bass in their voice and all types of things, and the people might take exception to some of what is being said here because it's like, what does that look like? Now we understand there are patterns. That doesn't mean everything, but there's, but the reality is male, female, non-gender conforming people. I've seen the struggle. I mean, I've seen the struggle. I've seen the struggle with even those who are considered heterosexual. I've seen it, and I've seen them fight it.
Well, there's a famous case that we all know about. These cases are, I would say, in the millions among human beings in the world and even in the United States of America. But Eddie Long.
Yeah.
Eddie Long, and I used to live in Atlanta. Eddie Long used to sponsor anti-homosexual parades down Peachtree that nobody asked him to do.
Yeah.
He just felt like doing it. And he was talking all this stuff about, and I knew, I mean, I don't want to sound like I know everything. I don't want to sound like a pompous know-it-all because I don't know everything, but I know about hate behavior. And I know about cause and effect, and I know about compensatory obsession. And I said to myself, this dude is going home to a man or a boy this evening while he's talking all this stuff. Now, I couldn't prove it, but I don't got to prove it now because now everybody knows.
Yeah.
And he was so humiliated, he couldn't even live with himself anymore and died prematurely from the shame that it caused him because he had been so anti with gusto and industrial strength for decades, uninvited, but volunteering to constantly talk about the issue and have these industrial strength male compensatory man drag revivals at his church where everybody was muscle bound and all this stuff that's homoerotic in my opinion. But the bottom line is that he's an example of what I'm saying that did come out into the light. And there's other examples of them that I can't get into right now because some of these people don't know yet in terms of what their sexuality is. Some of them have become very famous. But my point again to your Funky Geneva thing is that that's unfortunate that Funky Geneva does not have the insight to understand that he's likely mad at another same gender loving person.
So, okay, and I'm going to try to move this along. So, the LGBTQ plus movement, I know you use this SGL term. A few questions. I'm gonna throw a few things out there, and you kind of do what you do with it. One, I've always questioned your SGL framework, and is that also inclusive of other people who have different labels on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, and also because we know it's pretty complex there, and some of them might say, well, I'm not even same gender loving, right? I just identify as, maybe trans or queer or intersex or what have you, and I might not be same gender loving. I'm just wondering, does your framework make room for that? Two, I'm also thinking about what we spoke about earlier and some of the struggle that people have, and as as a result of doing research, I've been looking into journal articles about pre-colonial Africa and gender and, I mean, sexuality and all that type of thing, and what was there before, what was there, and to me it's very complex. I don't even people on any side of the argument, many times they're stretching to get one way or the other, but not but that but at the core some things existed. But what that looked like, how it expressed itself culturally, and all that type of thing is different. And just to be very clear, that it's not a one-way situation. There's always been influence from outsiders coming to the continent, so it's much more complex than people really speak to on these platforms in either direction. And it's almost like everybody's afraid to have a conversation on one direction or the other. And so with that, I'm thinking about some of the people in the African Centered community that they cite. Typically, you'll see Dr. Malefiki Asante, which who is to me is one more of the more lighter with his terminology, although he has made some strong statements, but also very clear that Afrocentricity, his particular framework, is against all forms of oppression, including homophobia. But later on in his book, he says that same gender loving or whatever, have a term he used in the book, is not to be the standard of African culture or relationships, though it's not to be oppressive. So last thing I'll say, I know I said a lot there. So then there's this other thing about how do we people struggle with this idea or the way that I speak about LGBTQ, because I'm always trying to separate movements and ideas from the people, and saying that everybody doesn't even identify as such. So I don't know. You deal with what you do with all that.
Well, I'll attempt to remember it all.
Okay.
You asked about identity, and is SGL inclusive of everyone?
Yeah. Of those
different, yeah.
that find themselves on the LGBTQ, whether or not they use the term or not, but that who they represent.
Sure. I'll start off by saying that, ironically, gay, which is a white male created terminology, almost never gets the type of investigation that SGL gets, even though SGL includes men and women and always have, or males and females and always have from the very beginning. Gay was a white male construction, very blatantly, but because of whiteness, it doesn't have the kind of investigatory nature as something came from a black person does, if I'm making myself clear. But when it comes to same gender loving, one of the reasons why the term was created was I was concerned that all the oppression that same gender loving people, black people, were experiencing by being invisibilized in their own community, that was justifiably defensive, because black people are very stigmaphobic, because there's always new reasons being created to mess with us, particularly when you go back in time, not that far back either, by the way. But there was black people, same gender loving people, were dealing with invisibility or oppression or religious persecution in a black community context, which I understand it all, so that's why I don't have a lot of visceral reactions to it, just problem solving solutions. Then they were dealing with erasure from the white homosexual / gay community and being marginalized, objectified, very much objectified, and dealing with rabid levels of racism, and there was no sanctuary. I'm using that word again. There was no sanctuary to resolve the pain of that dichotomy and struggle. So a lot of self-hatred, self-destruction, confusion, misdirected rage, all kinds of consequences came out of the lack of comfort in one's body because of how hostile the environment is. I was trying to find something that would be a way of framing ourselves as same gender loving people that was outside of the white racist frame of reference, and that in the company of ourselves and our community, reintroduce the concept of loving. Because once you are oppressed, to the point of exhaustion as a homosexual person in the black community, a lot of times what people do is go to places that are not healthy. And I won't get into any details about that, but I just want to resurrect the concept of loving, because in my own experience, in the majority of same-gender living people I've ever run into, they found themselves falling in love with someone of the same gender, and that being questioned because of how they were conditioned. And then when that was either not accepted, or they ran into a broken-hearted person that was same-gender loving that abused them, a lot of stuff came out of that resulted in something other than the consistent memory of being a loving person. So same-gender loving has all kinds of intentionality behind it. A frame of reference that came from black people, that affirms and considers black experience, that resurrects the idea of loving, and that is a movement to get people to love themselves in their own image, who are part of the subset that I'm from, as part of the black family. And there's other benefits to the term same-gender loving too. I'll just say one more in passing, is that when people hear about us from us through that lens, it's more humanizing of us. And I have some examples of that, but I've talked too much already, so I might get to that later. But when I talk about the spectrum, which is part of your question, I say SGLBT.
SGLBT.
Instead of all the other alphabets, same-gender loving by trans. Because in case someone is trans and doesn't identify as same-gender loving or bisexual, and their capability of loving goes beyond loving somebody of the same gender, I want to be inclusive.
So I know there's terms that you, like gay, and I'm not sure, perhaps lesbian, that you argue are Eurocentric constructs.
It's not no argument, just like ain't no argument that I'm black. I'm black. Ain't no argument. But before I explain myself, I want to mention that I'm not anti people loving themselves in their own image. So when whites came up with the pink triangle from Germany as their symbol, with lesbian from Greece as their symbol, from gay, which is a derivative of gay party in French, or the word queer, which came from Britain, and all these white celebrations of whiteness and white Eurocentric, I'm not mad about that. What bothers me is that when that becomes black people's frame of reference too, and they feeding into a myth of white supremacy, as if they don't have their own frame of reference that affirms them for real, because none of that affirms them. So I'm not mad about lesbian from Greece, the island of Lesbos. Enjoy yourself. But I'm real clear about the damaging impact that it has on me and people like me trying to fit into that. And why should we? It's not superior.
How's it damaging?
Because the paradigm and framework is powerfully white supremacist and racist and inconsiderate of black experience. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Again, I know I'm talking a lot, but it's your fault. Sometime, I think it was last year, Donald Trump pulled funds from the National Lesbian and Gay Suicide Hotline. You may or may not have heard about that. Because I'm the CEO of the largest center for this community in the state, I got a phone call from the press about, particularly the white gay press, about, well, Mr. Manago, what do you think about what Trump did? And I stayed calm, which is my strategy. And I said, why are you just calling me? And I knew they weren't going to understand the question, because they live in their own entitlement consciousness of whiteness, and there's nothing to be questioned from their perspective. But I say very calmly, why are you just calling me about what Trump has done? And they were like, what do you mean? And I talked to 6 people where I had to have the same conversation. They didn't know what I was talking about. So to get to the point, I said, he also, and his comrades also canceled black history. They also canceled black studies. They also are contemplating getting rid of Martin Luther King's birthday, and you didn't call me. I didn't get a phone call. And I'm not just one thing. I'm a human being that's black in this society that experiences different things. But when they attack black people, you didn't give me. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't get a phone call.
Yeah.
So why are you calling me now? So that's the point I'm trying to make to you, is that when white people have the opportunity, and this is just a fantasy conversation in terms of this situation, because I don't expect anything different, they don't come to the rescue of black people when Trump oppresses black people. You understand what I'm saying? They don't show up until the gay, as if there's no such thing as a same-gender loving black person. Am I clear?
Absolutely, I get it.
So it's dangerous for black people to settle for invisibility objectification, opportunistic behavior, making you come to the dinner because I need some minority money or whatever, all this stuff that they do when it's time to bring us in. It's always some kind of intentional opportunity, not the intention to humanize us and affirm and embrace us or encourage us to embrace ourselves. We encourage to embrace them and whiteness under the LGBTQ umbrella. Now, I got to say real quick, I'm sorry for talking so much, but I got to say this. I am the CEO of the largest organization in the state that serves everybody. And I create safe space for people who identify, I don't care how they identify. But what's different about the Pride Center, because Cleo Manago was there, is that there's demonstrative space created for SGL. That's growing as a phenomenon in other places, but it's guaranteed as a phenomenon where I'm at. But I want to make it clear, the opposite of pro-black is anti-black, not anti-white. And that I'm affirming black people don't mean I'm kicking white people out. It means that this is your place, and we're over here also making up for lost time. You understand what I'm saying? But everybody's invited, and I make sure they all have representation to the extent that I can with a very diverse staff. I got to say that because people defaulted to anti-blackness when I start talking about the affirmation of black people and the myth of exclusiveness. Am I clear?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to ask the question. You've already answered this, but I'm just curious, just for clarity and just for the sake of conversation, why do you believe they would come to you for sexual orientation before they come to you about racial identity?
Well, I think you're talking about white people or
whoever
or white adjacent people.
whoever came to you saying, well, what do you think about what Trump did, or what have you?
Well, again, I think you're asking a rhetorical question, but I'm gonna go with it.
It's for the audience.
They live, and I appreciate it, I really do. The people that called me about what Trump did were sincere human beings who cared about what Trump did, who are in a white accommodationist, white affirming, white entitlement framework, which is the Western world. So they look at what black people go through as something that marginalized people go through, something that's over there, something that people who are inferior to me should go through compared to me. And so they're not completely bothered by the so-called minorities challenge because they're caught up in the psychologically important myth of their superiority, which is like their crack. That's why Trump is the president of the United States right now. In reaction to Michelle and Barack, who defied symbolically only, not systemically, the myth of white superiority. They say, oh, we got to fix this. We got to fix this. We're going to get the most whitest person who's going to be very clear about, as Trump said, you will never be neglected again. He said that.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, we're going to fix this black interruption of the myth of our superiority. So I say all that to say that they weren't offended to the degree about the black dismissal as they were about the gay dismissal, because LGBTQ is a white paradigm.
Absolutely. It was somewhat rhetorical, but I want to be very clear because it doesn't really hit people that way. And I also heard you say something earlier that I would like to tie it back to, is that you spoke about those who identify as white and gay or white and lesbian, and queer and all the other
white ethos terminology.
Okay. That they, in other words, they voted for Trump. They put their racial agenda, if I could say, before their own sexual orientation or what have you.
And this is what I mean by the trauma trance. An associate of mine, a same-gender loving woman, came to my office devastated. Her mind was blown because she knows this feminist, often anti-male, anti-misogyny, hardcore, lesbian-identified white woman who voted for Trump. And I was her friend. And she was just devastated. And this is the power of the trauma trance, because if you're clear, you see it as, it's plain as day. If you watch Netflix or all this stuff on television where they have all these black people who are the one black person surrounded by a bunch of white people, even if the black person is the star of the show, they have a show now called what's the show called? It's called Die. God, I'm sorry, I can't remember the show. It's named off with the metaphor of I'm here till the wheel fall off. But that's not the terminology they use. But it stars the sister that played Madam C.J. Walker and this other woman. Anyway, it's a story that implies that a black woman do or die or something. It implies that a black woman is the star of the show, but she's the only black person in the show. Everybody is white except for occasional black cop or occasional black judge. Do it, Die Hard or it may come before. It's a cliche in terms of the show, but it means we're good buddies. This is my die. It's a phraseology that means that we're good friends, and it's a story about a black woman and a white woman who are good friends, but everybody is white of any consequence in there. My point is that there's a lot of shows on television like that that give black people who are desperate for white approval and white attention feeling good. Here we are being accepted, but they don't realize that it's racist as hell for there to be a depiction of humanity where there's only one black person who don't even love nobody black. That's not equity. That's not balance. That's white supremacy in drag, racism drag. Do or Die Hard or God, I forgot the name of the show.
Yeah. So you also spoke about earlier. You spoke about there's some real reasons why people are hurt. On one thing I realized you've done throughout this conversation. Let me just say that you tend to speak to all the sides. If you speak about women, you speak about their hurt, their pain, reasonable pain.
It's real.
Yeah, right. But you also speak about on the other end, the brothers, right? You spoke about those in the same gender loving community and what has happened to them. But you also spoke about perhaps why and what happened to create a certain mindset that I don't know how to put it, but heteronormative, whatever type
Term I hate, but go on.
You know what? Let me be real honest with you. Let me be real honest with you. I don't like it either, and I'll tell you why. Now I don't know why you don't.
Now I derailed you. I'm sorry because you were on a whole nother thing.
Now I'm gonna tell you why. I think there's some essentialness there, right? I understand it, but I also well, it's a whole different situation. That conversation might go somewhere because I think to me this like use that word normative. It's like how we use the word. It's like emulating everything that black people kind of their struggles as far as the white norm becomes the framework. It's like okay, in my framework I have something that I've been working on. I think some things we can say well these people see this as the norm, but I do also think there's something called which is typical. And I think sometimes we say heteronormative and not really understand that there are some things that are just typical. Go ahead. I see your mouth, your face. Go ahead. There are some things that just are typical, and it doesn't have to become oppressive.
Well, I know what you're implying, and you're implying that heterosexuality is typical. So why are we using terms like heteronormative?
No, I'm not saying you can't ever use that.
I know you,
but I
you
am
didn't give any rules and regulations, but I think I have framed the impulse.
Exactly.
Okay, so so I'm real clear. Okay, this stuff is so loaded. Human sexuality, and I'm gonna try to be brief here. Human sexuality is way more complex than King James allows us to realize. And I say King James because King James was part of the Victorian era where they had chastity belts. They were locking up vaginas and locking up penises and locking up testicles. You know about that, right?
I heard about the chastities, but I ain't know about the...
Oh, well, we live in the internet age. You can find the ball and chain that was around the penis and all the stuff
Jeez.
they were doing to control sexual behavior.
Yeah.
And frankly, the control of sexual behavior in the Victorian era was to promote heterosexuality and to denounce any other type of sexuality, missionary style, and missionary is a
Yeah,
powerful
yeah,
phrase, all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
because everything else was considered problematic, deviant, all this other kind of stuff. And the Bible, the Christian Bible, the King James version, if you will, is a dominating force in the Western world and any place else they have colonized. So all of that stuff, through a whole lot of myth making and making up stuff, pushes heterosexuality, and it's now considered quote unquote the norm. Now I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know what the norm is.
Okay.
I'm one of these people that don't assume that you're heterosexual, and I'm different from that until you tell me. And it might not even come up because I'm not going to ask because I really don't care.
You're right.
But I don't see, like Funky Geneva, a brother on the street who's not feminine or quote unquote obvious and all that kind of stuff, and assuming they're heterosexual. I don't make that assumption because I've experience and research in a worldview where sexuality is an expansive phenomenon, and all kinds of things can occur on the path to intimacy, on the path to orgasm, on the path to love. I mean, you'd be amazed the kind of things that human beings can do on that path, given the possibilities. So I say all that to say that I don't like the term normative because I know what that term is rebelling against. I don't think it's helpful. But I'll answer that question and summarize by saying that sexuality, sexual behavior, ways of being, and intimacy go beyond heterosexuality, same gender loving, all of it. It's a mixed bag, and so is this spectrum called gender. A lot of people make these hard turns toward being super feminine, including men, and hard turns in terms of being super masculine, including women, based on King James and other type of oppressive versions of what a male and female should show up as. So because they don't have room for their nuance as a normal part of the human experience, they put on drag. You understand what I mean? They put on an outfit. They get involved in performance around a gender model or paradigm that they might not have even done that if it wasn't for, and I'm using this as a metaphor, if it wasn't for King James, or the dominant tendency to say that girls get pink, boys get blue, not making room for the fact that some of them who want red and who want green and who want yellow, and that's who they are, but they don't make yellow baby beds. They're either pink or they're blue. And humanity is bigger than pink and blue.
So let me ask you this.
Is that making sense?
No, it makes sense. So, but with that, how do you account for cultures that have done things within the gender engendered ways? I'm saying, including pre-colonial Africa, right? Or is there, like, how do we? Because I see sometimes people typically they kind of in these camps begin to vilify any type of gender norms.
What do you mean? They vilify gender norms.
Okay, so how do you, rite of passage for boys, how do you do rite of passage for boys? How do you know that's his gender? How do you know that he wants to express that way? So what do you do with that? What do you do with cultural traditions in the way that I see people now speaking about gender?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but
Is there a place, let me just make it like this. Is there a place for boys' rites of passage and girl rites of passage?
Okay, that's a simpler, complex question. Okay, and I'm definitely saying this off the hip. This is not something that I've actually written about ad nauseum, but I've talked about it. I think that children should be allowed to be nurtured, loved, that there should be as few gender demands as possible in terms of forcing things on them. they should be allowed to have self-discovery. They should be allowed to have it, to learn what integrity is, and what protection and defense is, what being a good human being is, knowing about ecosystems in the world and cause and effect and nutrition and taking a bath and be healthy. But they should not be forced into any kind of particular gender paradigm because first of all, if they're not what you expect them to be or what you're demanding them to be, you're creating a mental illness. You're creating a person that's going to implode and who's going to often implode and hurt other people, like these men that in some instances that Geneva think are heterosexuals who are struggling homosexuals or bisexuals. So and they should have strong figures like a mother and a father, if that's what's in the home, that happens to be good people, that happens to be healthy role models, that happens to show up in ways that are respectable and helpful as opposed to destructive and traumatizing. What they are in terms of gender, particularly in a healthy, and that's the challenge sometimes, particularly in a healthy environment, what they are is going to whether they're heterosexual, same gender loving, or bisexual, that's going to come out in the mix if they're allowed to have a palette for self-discovery as opposed to self-denial. Now, life is on a spectrum. At some point, particularly by the time they're 17 and 18, if they have free will to learn who they are, we're going to know what kind of rites of passage they should have. Because rites of passage are helpful. But we don't know what it really is for them until they finally blossom into self-discovery. But the rites of passage is not thrown out the window. I'm not saying that for a minute. We, as black people, frankly, and I think it's more important than the gender conversation, in this white supremacist society, we need to have a rites of passages to learn how to not be anti-black and to decode all of the messaging in the culture that implies that being anti-black is the way it should be. So a rites of passage for us, if you want to talk about black people, needs to get us to learn to be the best who we are and to be critical thinkers and have a critical analysis. And we should enforce, know who you are, discover who you are, and learn to love yourself for who you are. Now, that's fantasy all day long because there's all these TV shows and all these other types of influences that give people the implication that this is what's right and this is what's wrong, and they learn to find out who they are beyond the gauntlet. But there are men or boys who've gone through, I know some real personally, I went through my boyhood rites of passage as well, where the assumption is that I was heterosexual. I mean, my father figure took me as part of my heterosexual lessons to meet some prostitutes, some female prostitutes, of course, and I was not interested at all. But I'm just saying it. And these women were quote unquote, prostitutes, or they call them sex workers now. They were beautiful, over the top, and all the stuff they do to look particularly sexy. Yeah. And my father, who they all knew had a first name basis. Like, why my father got a first name basis with some prostitutes? What's going on? That's a whole nother show. But the point I'm making is that was part of a rites of passage for me to prepare me for manhood, for heterosexual manhood. That, thank goodness, in my case, I've had a lot of self-actualization since I was 8. I've known who I was. So when he took me to them prostitutes, I was like, this is interesting. I hope he didn't pay nothing because ain't nothing gonna happen. But the point I'm trying to make to you is that rites of passage for a more vulnerable person or someone with less self-actualization or someone who's particularly traumatized by religion and King James, if you will, they might have been way more traumatized by that experience than I was because I was pretty advanced for whatever reason at a young age.
So rites of passage typically start younger.
I know.
So
I know that.
So
I'm clear about that.
So
but it's a gauntlet if it's not relevant to the person going through it.
Yeah.
Gauntlet is like a torture chamber or a oppressive vacuum. Now, people who are looking at me sideways right now going, we got to teach these brothers to be men. You got to teach these women to be women. Well, I have no problem with eventually doing that when people are more self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start forcing women, or excuse me, so-called, well, if you start forcing people born as women and born as boys and girls, etc., into this assumption,
Mm-hmm.
you do a lot of
So
damage.
you do a lot of damage.
That also winds up them damaging others. We have a lot of co-damagers in our community
Mm-hmm.
because of the gauntlet that was crazy making instead of self-actualizing.
Hmm. So you
That's why
say
you. That's why you're a rich man today
who?
in therapy.
oh, as a therapist,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think it's something to consider what you're saying here. Um, you said quite a bit, and I'm thinking about, yeah, I do clearly follow the what you're calling the gauntlet.
Gauntlet.
I follow that and how painful that can be.
Excruciating for people.
Yeah. And then something in my mind is saying there has to be a way that we identify or make. I still think that is essential. Culture is an essential aspect, and find ways not to make it um,
Parenting is essential.
such a
You're
traumatizing.
talking about raising children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And parenting is essential. That's why I said, and I'm saying to your audience, is that parents got to be somewhat sane.
Yeah.
They got to be somewhat healthy.
Mm-hmm.
They got to recognize by going through the CTCA program
Mm-hmm.
if they're out of balance or the C word. I didn't want to say crazy because it sounds
Mm-hmm.
judgmental, but they gotta realize if they're a healthy roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean because they're physically a man or physically a woman,
Mm-hmm.
because they're physically healthy
Mm-hmm.
in terms of how they operate. Because if you saying to a little boy who is more feminine than you would like, you are a faggot,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that shit,
Mm-hmm.
that's punk shit.
Yeah.
That's not therapeutic.
Right.
That does that what that teaches them to do if the person is effectively oppressive is to repress themselves and go into a trauma trance and try to spend their lives to replicate the gauntlet,
Yeah.
and then they wind up suffering. They wind up, in some cases, marrying somebody that they don't want to marry, and then they create the intergenerational trauma over and over again, and that's not helpful. So the bottom line is the male resurrection campaign, the feminine resurrection campaign, and the and all these campaigns are not necessarily creating an oasis of healthy black community.
So this goes back to something we spoke about off camera, and I think we can kind of tie it in now. And all the things you're saying, um, I have shown up in my counseling room, so I know it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And now the approach, I think I will have to reflect on that a bit and how that's best done. Um,
Rites of passage.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I still think that there's I'm just
A place for
I'm looking
it.
at things statistically and things like that, which is kind of like we kind of spoke to. A
But
bit
you
off
got to look at the framework, because you may have, and I'm sorry for interrupting, this may be irrelevant to what you're saying, but you have people that do well. That's why I say there's a difference between comfortable and familiar. You have
Mhm.
some people who master their oppressive gauntlet.
No, I really I mean let's stay right there for a second. I mean because it's real, and everything you said, everything you said. I mean I've sat in here with people who are questioning and still questioning and trying to figure this thing out because they're also hearing these stories from them being a child that said that you are gay,
As a
and
complaint.
so as a complaint, and what they did in their life was to do everything to be not that, to not be that,
And some have
and
become public speakers and anti-homosexual advocates. That speak against it as an obsession and trying to warn the black community about homosexuality. And that's part of how they repent against themselves and hopefully transform because they've worked so hard to be this poster child of anti-homosexuality.
So let's do this. So I think this is really a great piece because then there's the origin story, right? So I can hear that some would say, well, that's a trauma reaction. I can hear some would say that it was the biological debate. I can hear some people say it's socialization. I can hear people saying it's a part of white supremacy. I can hear like all these different things going on. So what do you say?
You funny. What do I say about all this stuff?
And we're gonna come back to Malefic Kitty and Santi and them later.
I'm gonna give a real basic answer first, and I hope this doesn't sound too impotent, but pardon the phrase. I'm here. Same-gender loving people are here. I didn't take no same-gender loving pills. You know, I didn't go to same-gender loving high school or middle school or a church. I was raised to be a heterosexual person with a wife one day and children, like most of us are. That's how I was raised. That was so you go to the family reunion, baby, where your girlfriend at? You know, you go to that's how I was raised. And from the age of 8, when I heard those things, I was like, oh well, they're not coming. But I didn't necessarily go into detail around they were not coming, but I didn't buy into the phraseology because I was very clear about who I was. But what was the question?
Well, no, it's a complex question, and so now and I know you're utilizing yourself as an example.
Yeah.
Now sometimes that becomes touchy for me to kind of come back.
But I have other stories because just like you sit and hear from all kinds of people.
Right.
Don't get me started.
Right. So
and just yesterday for me too.
Yeah. So thank you. So I'm just saying like it becomes uncomfortable for me to some degree to have the discussion sometimes.
Sure.
Because I don't want to like have you answer from like it's coming from you. Now you know Dr. Patricia Newton, right? And some are now she didn't say that all people who are same gender loving experience some level of abuse. I mean, or sexual molestation or what have you, or some violation. But she said in her sample within the clinical work she did was hundreds of people that they typically have had some early childhood experience.
Let's talk about that before I lose it.
Okay, go ahead.
Because we're talking about a lot, and you ask really compound questions.
And let me end it off with this. And I can say in my sample size, I find that to be also part of the pattern. I'm not saying.
Okay, let me tell you, and I said this to Dr. Welsing, who, by the way, one of my primary heroes in my life. I love Dr. Welsing.
Yeah.
I get goosebumps still when I think about her. When she was alive, too. Brilliant, amazing. The people who wind up coming to you are asking for mental health.
Yeah.
That's why they came to you. So that's like saying, well, all the fish that I caught had water on them. Well, they're in the water. They're wet. I told Dr. Welsing, who wrote the ISIS papers, and people said what you just said about her sample were same-gender loving or homosexual and bisexual men who are struggling with their sexuality. Well, that's why they went to her. I wouldn't have gone to her. Or you, or Newton, because I'm not struggling with that. So of course your sample size is going to be people, and that's what I tell people who try to hate on Welsing and call her homophobic, which I don't believe I think that's a very unfortunate, simple description of the vast perspectives that she carried. But yeah, men particularly who are struggling with sexuality, which farther back in time you go, there are most of us because of the lack of sanctuaries, went to her because they were struggling.
Yes, sir.
So that's why your sample size is full of people that are struggling.
Now,
But I bet you one thing, and I told this to Dr. Welsing too. I said, I bet you have the same number of heterosexual people who are struggling too.
Yeah. Now I wasn't necessarily saying struggling with sexuality, right? I was saying just struggling.
Well, that's what you're talking about with Newton, right?
When Newton was she saying struggling with sexuality, or she? Basically that she notices this pattern within the population,
a disproportionate pattern within the population. And my perspective is, well, yeah. I mean, most of the people who. Not all, not by a long shot, because as you acknowledge, my palette is full of all kinds of people and all kinds of concerns.
Absolutely.
But of course, the disproportionate people that come to me are people who are feeling like they want to feel better about who they are.
Right.
And they've heard me say something that was inspirational or whatever,
Right.
or interesting to consider, and they want some more information on ways to learn to love themselves in their own image.
Yeah.
The people who are not struggling with that don't come to me.
Right. So you saying that the Dr. Wells and people call her homophobic or what have you said that's
I'm saying that, first of all, it's easy to call black people homophobic. People do it all the time.
Yeah.
They don't have no nuance or no other way of looking at it except through a white supremacist, gay identity, limited framework of you're homophobic. And that's why you, like, for example, this young man said to me right out of the gay academy, white gay academy, he said, my mother wants me to have children and I don't want to have children. My mom is homophobic. And I said, that's not homophobic for your mother to want to have grandchildren. Is that homophobic for her to want you to have children? She probably think you're a special child and she wants some more of you to be reproduced. And she would like to see that, and she regrets that, likely, at least from her perspective, that's not going to happen. That is not homophobic.
It's not?
No.
No, I'm that's rhetorical for real. Now,
But my point is that the gay school, which is a very limited school, particularly for black people, because it doesn't consider the nuance and experiences and context of being black, we'll have this was a black person doing this, we'll have black people come to that linear deduction of because my mother is mad at me because I'm not waving a flag and because I'm gay, and now she wants me to have kids. And it's like, as a matter of fact, they're honoring you by wanting you to reproduce yourself. And so sometimes I have to give similar messages with other stuff. I mean, it's not that simple.
no, I get what you're saying.
To get them to think outside of the linear, unconstructive gay box and become a black human being that considers black experience and that considers the male wound that black people live with. And that's a whole nother thing. The male wound is that black people to this very day, but particularly back in the day when there were graphic lynchings and even more police brutality, which has still not been resolved, have seen black men tortured in one way or the other. And there's some black people who don't have any understanding of sexuality and sexual nuance who can deduce based on their worldview that maybe all this homosexuality and all this feminine male stuff is a consequence of this unresolved brutality toward black men. And it's like we have to resurrect our black men and make them strong because they becoming homosexuals. When in fact, we haven't even had a community conversation about homosexuality in a way that's rational and engaged.
Dr. Manago, look, look, we can sit here all night.
I think we have, haven't we?
We've been here. We've been here since 4:00, but I'm all night.
But I hope I'm not confusing. That's
no.
my concern.
I want to. No, it's not confusing. I appreciate you and your time and your handling of the conversation, because I think there's something healing in it. That is sometimes difficult for people to really kind of like deal with on a visceral level, as you spoke about earlier. That sometimes it seems when I hear your examples that reframing of what perhaps may be going on, lots of time, and that's a counseling technique. But typically, if you do it on these airways, people see it as if you're supporting the oppressor, you're the patriarch. And for me, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I say it a little different. I don't let the white lady off. I don't let the white man off. I call it the white matriarchy and patriarchy. Look, they did their thing too. But nonetheless, I think it's something healing in it because it requires you to step outside of yourself, or us to step outside of ourselves and see perhaps that other person's vantage point. And that's a lot of work. But it sounds like you've been doing it successfully.
I would say so, but also, and I know exactly what you mean by it being a lot of work, that it's not a lot of work when you have a value system of creating safe space for self-actualization and having that as an agenda, instead of creating dangerous space for your agenda in another human body. Did you understand what I just said?
No.
Okay, I'll say it again. A lot of people do not create safe space
Mm-hmm.
for human possibility.
Mm-hmm.
They create what I call dangerous space for
Mm-hmm.
people to be what they want them to be.
Yeah.
And we have a society that's getting worse and worse when it comes to human connection
Mm-hmm.
and relating to each other and being civil,
Mm-hmm.
because this is the accumulative impact of dysfunction as a social norm between human beings. And how that's relevant to what you're saying is that if we don't create space for people to show up as they are and figure themselves out or be understood as opposed to being put in a box, we're gonna have a bunch of implosions. And that's why we have them. We have mass shootings in schools. All this stuff is all this stuff is relevant to the gauntlet, the torture chamber. That's a well-meaning torture chamber as prescribed by King James.
Mm.
And there's other people too that made this prescription, but that's a dominant. King James Bible is the dominant religious prison, if you will, of the United States of America, and you can't out Christian black folks. You know that.
No.
We do it with industrial strength.
So, all right. So I'm gonna get back to these scholars because I can't keep you all night.
And you got some interesting comments coming up here too
I could go on for all night
about man and woman and child and all this, but go on.
So y'all can hit the link and come in and talk to Dr. Manago.
Yes.
The link is in the chat, family. Come and talk to Dr. Manago. Scholars, but let me ask you a question. So you're sitting here with me. You've probably been here since, I don't want to give everybody your time, but we've been here for hours. How does the space feel for you?
Which space?
The conversation.
Your space?
Yeah, yeah.
The conversation or
Just
talking
the
with
conversation
you?
in general, yeah.
Frankly, it feels great.
It feels great.
And let me tell you why.
Uh-huh.
And I don't take that for granted at all. Because I've been on a lot of shows, talked to a lot of folks, maybe it's because you're not only a trained and experienced therapist, but you have a interest, whether it's organic. I mean, I don't know where it came from, in creating safe space. But it don't got nothing to do with me. I mean, I appreciate it, but that's who you are. And I say that because not to just blow you up, but I witnessed you as a teacher, and I witnessed you in the presence of young people who were saying stuff that was not always making sense or logical or even true, but you had grace, and I feel your grace. So that makes it a good experience too. And also, what's clear as a bell to me, which I really appreciate, is that you want us to be good. You want us to be healed. You want us to not repeat trauma context that leads us to dysfunction and implosion. And that's clear to me. So I share that agenda. So that makes me have a good time. Because I've been on shows where people are caught up in King James or caught up in trying to convince me that through all their homosexual obsession, anti-homosexual obsession, that their heterosexual person was mad at me. They ain't fooling me. And I've been talked to women who are mad at their man for possibly being a homosexual, and indeed that was the case, or resent that same gender loving men are taking up or messing with the pool. You might have heard that, the man pool, and create and new competition. We already can't find no man, and I was going to do the neck thing, but trying to act it out. But I spoke to people who are resentful. I spoke to same gender loving or gay identified people who don't like me because they don't get me. I mean, as the head of the largest organization in this state that serves this population, there's some people who really don't like that I'm there because they've never had a black affirming, autonomously black embodied person run that kind of agency. Typically, it's a white adjacent black person, white partner, white gay culture encapsulated, or they're simply white. So all that to say is that because of your space that's so opening, and I can tell by your books and what you got here that you are a chameleon, I do feel comfortable.
I appreciate that. And the reason why I asked is that I don't know. I still have to think things out. I may not always agree with everything. I'm actually like I absolutely like safe space. I also like what I call a sacred space. I like where we can
Me too.
have the back and forth, the dialectical process in real time. I found out that most people who talk about the dialectic, they typically struggle with the dialectical process, and I find that you to also have that similar skill and ability as you spoke about. I always forget the
CTCA.
CTCA model and how you train people to be able to regulate themselves in order in that conversation. I don't feel uncomfortable, honestly. Too, I'm not doing a lot of regulation, because honestly, like I will say this, like becoming a therapist. I think I shared it with you earlier, maybe in a different way. It has helped me see people. I don't know if they help, but I have seen people at their most vulnerable places. I'm talking about all people, and there's nothing more. You see the humanity in people when all the layers are gone. And so for me, I know that this type of conversation within the community, from I'm gonna, I'm typically on this side is gonna be seen as someone who's critical of LGBTQ, and that means all people who are same gender, whatever. Like they're going to hear that. Those who want to hear that. Then there's going to be people over here like, oh, he's with the gay agenda, So 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 I mean, go. You want to say something about that?
Well, everything provokes me because I think I'm always thinking about these things.
Mhm.
But all I was going to say is there is a gay agenda. I described it throughout this show.
Say that one time.
I said there is a gay agenda. I've described it throughout this show.
There is. What's the
The,
gay
sa-
agenda?
the sanctuary that I described,
Uh-huh.
the white gay paradigm or politic or culture, is an agenda. It's not a black agenda. It's not. In most cases, it's not even inclusive of blackness agenda.
What's that agenda look like though?
That homosexuals, led by white people, have freedom and liberation in the Western world.
Mm.
But what's problematic with that notion of liberation is that they're too naive, ignorant, or caught up in their training to be white superior delusionists that they don't have the clarity or the insight to be humane and inclusive in a real way about it. Everything has to be on their terms.
Mm.
That's why we call ourselves queers, and as opposed to SGL in terms of the larger tendencies.
What's wrong with queer?
Queer is from Britain. It's a British slang term, and it's fine. It's part of the linguistics that are offered, but it does not historically affirm me. And the intentionality behind the use of the word doesn't inform me. The intention behind the use of the word is some more white affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
It came from Britain. It came from white people.
Mm-hmm.
There's terms like before gay became highly marketed by white homosexual people. There are terms that black people use like, are you in the life?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've heard that before.
I've heard it.
Are you one of the children?
Mm-hmm.
That was the terms we use. Are you family?
Mm-hmm.
And those terms that we use quite lovingly,
Mm-hmm.
because we all understood each other's struggle, create a certain level of community and harmony and even warmth toward each other. And we looked at gay when I was young as a white, and it still is, a white phenomenon, a white thing, something that white people call themselves. And we stopped calling ourselves one of the children, or are you in the life, or are you family?
Mm-hmm.
So we have black frames of reference, which really are better for us.
Mm.
It's better for our psychology. It's better for our deflection of the impact of racism. It's more affirming of us than what whiteness offers us.
I've heard a lot of those terms, especially. I mean, I used to be in fashion shows as a youth.
So you knew a lot of same 11 people. You probably got accused every now and then.
So I don't want to say you don't want to be stereotypical, but I mean, I was in fashion shows and things like that in high school. And those who made my clothes, those who were in the fashion shows, some of my own family. So what I'm saying is the terms and
So that's why you knew about end of life.
in the life and the pig Latin and all that type of thing, right? So I mean, the young brothers who would be doing all the things, ooh, haga, shaga, all that type of thing.
We have could be interrupting, but black people have, and everybody knows that's why I don't use the term white dominant and say white dominating. Black people carry a swagger, a pizzazz, a magic, a color, a spark, a rhythm, a presence that's phenomenal. And things that have come out of the African vortex that we know nothing about, that if we did know about, we would have more mental health, we would have more unity, we would collaborate more, we would be less white accommodations and anti-black if we actually knew where we came from and the wonderful things about us. Now, we're human beings, so there's some of us who do stupid stuff, and there always will be human beings in all groups that do stupid stuff. But when it comes to the metaphor swagger and magic, you can't, we we it.
So let's go
Which is
here.
why everybody is always trying to do us.
All right, with that, all this blackness, and my students, they struggling, and people struggling, people in the chat right here, saying type of things. Some of them, right? So my thought is, though, I think I see Dr. John Henrik Clark's name. I've heard you speak about people like Dr. Marimba Ani. I've heard you speak about Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. I've heard you speak about Dr. Malefikia Asante. I've heard you speak about Nation of Islam Louis Farrakhan. All these type of people you've had some conversations with. And I'm really curious before we kind of get out of here, like, if you could tell us a little bit about some of the most key moments in those conversations that,
I'll tell you one of my favorite stories, but I can't tell you who he is because he might be embarrassed by this. So people are gonna have to try to figure it out. But there's this figure in our community who has been actively anti-homosexual in their rhetoric. Not so much now, but for years, decades, a while back. Now they've moved on, and I think our conversation among others is part of why. But they were talking about how homosexuals were abominations and deviants and all these terminologies, and male and females, how everything should be, and they went on and on. So I listened, and I'm abbreviating a relatively long story, and I said, brother, I already gave away their gender. I said, I have nothing to prove to you. I'm not interested in proving nothing to you because I don't need to prove nothing. I'm fine with who I am, but I'm willing to educate. And I broke down all these things that I believed in, that I understood, that are relevant to black power, black progress, black mental health, reducing harm to black people, by black people, between black people. And I went on and on about these things that I live and breathe. And he looked at me shocked, because he didn't expect the same living person to even give a damn about these things, but this is what I live and breathe. And when I got finished with him, I said, I need you to tell me a real good excuse to throw me away, for me not to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me, and before he answered my question, he talked about playing the violin. And he talked about how, based on his life experience, he learned to play the violin, and how he was called punks and faggots for playing the violin. He almost admitted that part of his anti-homosexual reactions was a response to the shame he felt when he was being massacred emotionally from carrying a little violin case around, because he loved the music, and that's why he did it. But he had no sanctuary, I use that word as a metaphor, to make him feel good about that. So he had shame about the implication that he was a homosexual or a fag or a bad person, because as a boy, because he played the violin. And something in my conversation made him admit that and say that. Because at first he was talking about deviants and going to hell and punks and all this kind of stuff. But the conversation made him admit and confess what was really going on for him, that he religiousized, if you will, made it part of his rhetoric. And people, he had a strong voice. When these brothers, how they get strong voice orators and talking all this smack. Excuse me, maybe more appropriate. Saying all these things about how they feel about homosexuals, et cetera, and getting the congregation going. And just like Eddie Long, they were trying to convince themselves through their orator skills and their audience of something that defied them, that they had internalized, that they were trying to get everybody else to defy too. That was really a contradiction. Am I clear?
Yeah.
So that was a powerful experience that I had with this person. There was another person. This person was female, who had written very well known, famous person, who had written a bunch of anti-homosexual rhetoric and everything. When there's another organization I work with called the Black Men's Exchange, which is an organization that embodies all of the stuff that I talk about, but it purposely creates space for same-gender loving and bisexual and gender identified as male people and allies, which is heterosexual and all kinds of people. The bottom line is that this sister who had written all this stuff about anti-homosexuals, again, I'm abbreviating, came to this meeting. First of all, she was shocked because our meetings are black. You know, they're black. Our content is black affirming. Our goal and our agenda is to help heal and advance the black experience. And we happen to be same-gender loving people who we're also advancing, not in terms of recruitment, but each other who's part of this community who otherwise are ignored, etc. Anyway, to make a long story long, she totally changed her perspective of the issue because she saw some black affirming same-gender loving people that she'd never seen before, because most of them that she saw were on TV running behind somebody white, like Norman, Is That You? You might be too young to remember the movie Norman, Is That You? You know what I'm talking about, do you?
You talking about Psycho?
No, Norman, Is That You?
Oh, okay.
It's a movie starring Pearl Bailey and Red Fox from back in the 70s. Was about a black couple with a same-gender loving child. Audience, go get your internet or whatever and look it up. It's called Norman, Is That You? It was a movie that was made back in the 70s with the attempt to affirm same-gender loving people from a black perspective. But the guy in the movie, of course, was chasing somebody white. That's always how they did it. But my point is that when she got finished engaging us, she had a whole different perspective. And one person's name I will say, he's no longer with us, with the woman's, well, anyway, Neely Fuller. Neely Fuller met with the Black Men's Exchange.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And it had an impact on how he articulated the issue and his frequency of talking about it, because it made him think. Because the bottom line is, we don't control the narrative in this society of who we are. White people control the narrative of everything. Every time they show us, we're chasing somebody white, or we're particularly feminine. And I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm talking about how we're depicted. They show us in all these different ways, and Don Lemon, white partner, Billy Porter, white partner, Wanda Sykes, white partner, RuPaul, white partner. The whole list of well-known same-gender loving people all have white partners, so they're all caught up in the white adjacent framework. You rarely hear somebody like me, and you never will, from a large media platform who've been existing almost 70 years, and there's others like me, because we don't fit the paradigm. So therefore, as a result of not fitting into the hegemonic white supremacist paradigm, it's like we don't exist, and we hear all day long. So the point is that we have to create space as black people and discover our diversity so we can make it safe to be black. Because now we're being trained to turn on each other.
Yeah.
And we're being trained to brutalize each other and invisibilize each other and damage each other. And I'm not one to try to go on no homosexual binge to tell everybody to like homosexuality. I'm asking you to be decent and considerate. Try that.
Yeah. I'm looking at this comment here, and it seems to be a bit. I don't know. I don't think this is what I heard since I've been here. It says he had said nothing about our people and what we have to do as a population. He's only talking about homosexuality issues. Am I wrong? It's all about him, effing him and his tribe. Now, what do you say?
I say that this person must have come into either one or two things. They came into the show late, or they have a homosexual focused concern, because as you said before, and it's true about me, my basic concern, particularly in the context of this show, is black people, period, and problem solving for the black family and reducing conflict within the black family so we can successfully collaborate and be a powerful unit as opposed to a dysfunctional unit that works more for white power than for black progress. Now, that's not a homosexual only concern or perspective. That's a black perspective. Now, when you ask me questions about homosexuality, I'm gonna answer it because I know how. But as I said before you even read that message, homosexuality is hardly my primary concern. It's hardly my agenda. It's hardly what I'm fixated about. It's not. What?
He, I think he's talking.
Oh, cool.
Brother Robbie Rand, what it is?
Yeah, I'm here.
Something good,
What's
brother.
going on? So, what solution do you have for our peoples?
Well, I think I've been not. I don't think I've been talking about solutions for Black people throughout this show. One of the
Such
solutions
as?
I was getting ready to say it. One of the solutions I talked about is that we should be healthy. We should be healthy in the presence of Black children. We should teach Black children to love themselves in their own image and be an image that will help them become good people or balanced people when they become adults. We should learn to identify white supremacist implications and messages that teaches us to be anti-black, and we should understand that it's all over the place. It's full of, that it's saturated everything. We need to learn how to decode it so we can stop being anti-black and being internal to the Black community as problematic to Black progress, and stop using white folks as a sanctuary and as a frame of reference for our progress.
So, you don't have any solutions because these are things we already know. You offer
Well,
no
it
solutions.
might be things you already know, but
No, it's
I run into
go
a lot
ahead.
of people who don't know.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out since when has a homosexual man led our people to anything in any struggle?
Well,
And
I don't think you know the sexuality of everybody who's been
well,
in leadership in the Black
well,
community.
well, let me just say this: homosexuality is un-African. It is
Okay,
anti-African,
okay. And that's what you should have
and
said
it
in the
has
first
no
place before asking
place,
those
and
questions.
it has no place in African society. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
You serve no purpose. There's no family. Where's the reproduction? There's no man, woman, and child in homosexuality. I mean,
Okay. You want me to respond to that?
yeah, that
Sure. First of all, I'm not here to push homosexuality. So let me make that clear. I've
I
spoken about all kinds of
disagree.
things. Let me finish, brother. I listen to you. I'm not here to push homosexuality. I'll answer questions relevant to that issue because I've been asked to. So no, that's not a problem. I also want to reiterate that you have no idea what the sexualities of a lot of people that are known leaders in this community in our history, what this sexuality really is, because people similar to your perspective don't feel safe enough to say who they are on that level, so they claim to be something, or it's assumed that they're something that they prefer you to think, so they won't be under any kind of lack of safety. So we don't know a lot of people. I personally do know a lot of the sexuality of some of our leaders, some of the great leaders, because that's something that interested me. But a lot of us don't know. When it comes to family, man, there's all kinds of families, some that are led by same gender loving people, where there's children, where there's marriage, where there's family. There's all kinds of them. There's all
So,
kinds of same gender people who are reproducing children
so you
because
and
they
your
want.
husband can reproduce a child? Hmm?
Well, no. There's a lot of heterosexual people who reproduce children who shouldn't have, because they're not good. They're not good parents,
So,
and
if
they
our
some of them. So I mean, this is a very nuanced situation that doesn't have one answer. There's people that should be parents regardless of their sexuality, and there's parents of all sexualities who raise healthy children. I know this for a fact. Just because somebody is a heterosexual and both the man and the woman is a heterosexual does not guarantee that a healthy child is going to be raised and produced. Dr. Winkler is a therapist. He sees all kinds of people. He sees all kinds of people who were raised by heterosexual who are out of their minds. And it's not because they're heterosexual they're out of their minds, because the people that raised them were likely not healthy people and then reinforce healthy ideas in their mind or give them a healthy environment, though they happen to be heterosexual. I bet he also run into people who had two parents of the same gender who were healthy human beings, who gave them healthy messages and healthy role modeling, where the child came up with more balance. It happens all the time.
I can vouch for that.
I'm listening.
I'm finished. It happens all the
Oh,
time. So what? There's people who assume stuff all the time about people, and
Well,
they call
that's just
it.
here. So I'm talking
I'm sorry.
about. Yeah, that was somebody saying something?
Yeah,
No.
you should go, Robert.
Okay, I'm talking about our major organizations that have fought for the emancipation and the freedom of our people. I'm not talking about little bull crap.
Okay.
You feeling offended because somebody said a bad word to you or said an
Oh,
offensive
I'm not
word
either.
to you.
I'm not
I
either.
don't care nothing about none of that. I'm talking
I'm
about
not either.
major issues
What I'm telling
dealing
you,
with
brother.
our race, dealing with
What
our
I'm telling you,
people,
brother, is
African
some.
American people.
What I'm telling you, brother, and I'm going to try to say this with precision instead of being long-winded. Our society or black culture has been trained not to create safe space for black people, particularly black men, and in many instances, particularly black women, black people. So as a result of us not being safe and being in a hostile environment, our priorities have not been our sexuality and our sexuality and its diversity. It's been trying to survive while being black in a hostile environment. And there's been people who are bisexual, same gender loving, all types of different ways of being, who have been in leadership and powerfully known and who are famous in our iconic spectrum of people who you assume were heterosexual, and that's exactly what they wanted you to assume so they could be safe. Some people never knew that Mom's Mabley, who you might be too young to know who
I know
Mom's
about
Mabley
Mama
is.
Baby. That has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Let me
So I'm
finish my
saying
point.
no, no,
Let me
no,
finish my
because you
point.
you, you already
No,
made you
there's
already
one point
said
I
this
want to make.
already.
I'm going to make it. My point is that people did not know. I'm trying to use her as an example. People did not know her and a whole lot of people that were known in our community, including leaders, what they were because
I
they
want to
didn't
deal with
say
this
anything.
safe space. I want to deal with this concept of a safe space. So you telling
Sure.
me homosexual, you as a homosexual man, you're going to create a safe space for for the African family to do what?
No, what I'm saying, I don't really know what you're referring to. What I
You
was
said
saying,
safe space. I want to. What is your
I'm
safe
telling you,
space?
I'm
What?
going to tell you what I meant
Okay.
by safe space
Okay.
since I'm the one who
Yeah.
brought it up. I'm saying that in a hostile society, just like you had black people who tried to pass, particularly who were light skinned or mulatto or who could look white, and nobody knew they had black blood. And some of them became very famous. There are same gender loving people who became very famous too, who were trying to pass as heterosexual or
What
not
does that have to do
defined.
with what I'm talking about?
It
That
has
has
to do
nothing
with
to do with
safe
what I'm
space.
talking about.
It has to do with safe space.
Bro, we were brought over here on slave ship. So yeah, we're going to be in a hostile environment because we weren't brought here to be citizens. We weren't brought here to be equal. So you
That's true.
goddamn right, the environment's
That's
going to
true.
stay hostile towards us because we are
That's
African
true.
people.
That's
Now,
true.
I want to know what safe space do you plan on having for African people as a homosexual man? What safe space can you create for our family?
Okay, well, I happen to be a same gender loving person, but I spent a lot of time creating safe space for black families. I spent a lot of times engaging heterosexual black couples to keep them together when they're falling apart, to teach them to not be trauma sources for black children. I have a program that I created called, God, it's been so long since I've created it, called Leadership Through Black Parenting. And the Leadership Through Black Parenting program is to teach people with children, most of them are heterosexual, how to be an intentional parent to deflect anti-black messages in the culture that teaches them to hate themselves, call
Huh?
themselves N-words, and destroy black people.
Yo, bro, you talking rhetoric right now, bro. Come on,
I'm giving
stop
you
that
a
nonsense.
program that
Stop that
exists.
nonsense, man. You tell a
Okay, well,
homosexual man is going to
this
teach
shouldn't
you
go
want to
on.
teach
You
you
want
want
to
to teach black
typecast me
couples
into a
how to
little
be
box that I'm not
a
in.
couple. You teaching black people how to be a couple. Like, are you serious, bro? Are you
Yeah,
fucking serious?
I'm quite serious.
So we need a homosexual man to teach us how to be a family.
You got homosexuals
Is
teaching
that
me
what
all
you're
kinds of
saying?
stuff, brother.
Is that
I
what you're
know, no,
telling me?
I'm saying, if you would listen for a moment, I'm saying what I'm saying. You're saying what you're saying. I don't go to people to be helpful to them from a therapeutic perspective to be a homosexual in the room. I go to them to use my skills and my training and my insight and my capacity to be of service. I don't walk in with a
To be
homosexual
a
t-shirt or going, I'm gonna do some homosexual work. I'm doing human work for black people.
oh man. Mm.
Now I see that you're having, some strong reactions and etc. But I'm not saying what you're saying. I'm saying what I'm saying. I don't
I,
walk around with homosexuality as the main reason for my existence. I am a servant of the black community.
bro, since I clicked on this link, that's all I heard you talk about is homosexual this, homosexual that, this, that. Like, bro, are you serious? So now we are focused on you and your people?
So,
My people. You're
brother,
my people.
No, I'm not. No,
Oh,
no,
sorry.
no,
You
no,
don't have
no,
to be,
no,
but you're
no,
my
no,
people.
no, 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 no. Hell no. You
brother
belong to the
Ray,
white man, bro. That's who you belong to. You belong to our enemy. No. Hell no.
brother Rand.
Yep, I'm here.
Have you ever heard of Kwazi Balagoon?
No. No, I haven't.
I would say look him up. You know what I mean? And I get I understand the the passion, I guess, the reaction here.
It's
I
familiar.
think that um, Dr. Manago spoke about it, and I think these conversations are important, nonetheless, because in the black family, I'm just curious to when we have these conversations. I don't think we have these conversations. Let me just be clear,
We
but I
don't.
think that it's essential to have these conversations because what I'm curious to what do we do with our race first people who are same gender loving? What do we do with them? I'm just curious. I have questions. Do we get rid of them? Do we tell them they can't fight? Do we tell them they can't fight on our sides and send them to the quote unquote the enemy side? I mean, I'm curious to what your thoughts are about that because I actually asked this question earlier. I just based I stated this question earlier offline, and I'm just curious to what do we do because what I see in my programs is that the particular people, unlike Dr. Cleo Manago here, typically find themselves really supporting the status quo, white supremacy,
Regardless of sexuality.
and regardless of sexuality.
Most of us do.
But even more so when it comes to sex and gender. Well, so what do we do? So what do you do with people like Olagun? What's his name? I always get his name wrong. Balagoon. What do we do about people like James Baldwin? What do we do with people like? What about these
James
people?
Baldwin was a writer. He wasn't a leader. He was a writer.
No. Well, people lead in different ways. But I do get what you're saying. What do you do with people like Balagoon and other people, of course? Like, what do we do with them? I'm just asking the question.
Hmm. Well, the question I posed in the chat,
Mm-hmm.
can someone point out to me in all our freedom struggles and a homosexual that led us? And I'm talking
That's
about
a good
all
question.
all the revolts, all the slave revolts in Jamaica, Haiti, in America, on the slave ships, all the documented revolts and revolutions we've had. Can you point out to me a homosexual male that has led us?
Kawazi Balagoon.
Who the
And
hell is
then
Quasi Belagoon? And when did
look,
and teach me?
no, look him up, But also, I'm as he
Huh?
articulated that we don't know how people express themselves inside of the room.
No idea.
Well, any of the leaders of the Haitian Revolution homosexual men?
Well, we don't know. I mean, well, hold on. Let me say, what any of the leaders of the Haitian rep, I would have. Look, what I'm saying is, I don't think you know, nor I know,
You
but I
don't
would
know.
imagine that.
I think
Uh,
it would have been talked about. I think something would have came out. Something would have came out, especially
Man,
being chronicled by white people.
let me tell you something, man. I have
I'm
gone
listening.
places. I have gone places to speak, and the whole time I was speaking, they thought a heterosexual man was talking, including the same gender-loving people in the audience. And they
Okay, we
didn't
can't
find it hard.
verify that, but that's just
Let
coming
me
out your
finish,
mouth. So
bro.
go ahead.
You got to let somebody finish. You got to have the courage to listen, brother. So my point is that they didn't know, and in many cases, people don't know, including during the Haitian Revolution,
Oh
etc.
God.
They don't know. There was even trans people involved in activities that occurred in Africa and Hatshepsut and other people back
No,
in the day.
no, no, no,
Let me,
no,
you
hell
gotta let me
no. You
finish,
don't know
man.
what
You
you
gotta let
talk.
me
Don't
finish.
start
You gotta
talking
let me
about
finish.
Kemet, bro, because you don't know what
There's
you're
there's
talking about.
another point I want to
I
make,
know about
inspired
Kemet.
by
I
Dr.
studied
Winkler's
that.
question about what you
Don't
gonna do with
bring
us.
that's no ain't no homosexuality in there, bro. Nah, you bugging.
Okay,
You
okay,
bugging the
let's
fuck
go.
out. Now you
Well, like
bugging.
Dr.
Now
Winkler
you
said,
pseudo. Now you
like
pseudo,
Dr. Wink,
nigga.
hey, you got to be able to listen, and you just called me the N word, so now you're a huge hypocrite. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make to you is that you don't know what their sexuality was. You have no idea. And one of the things that I said earlier in this program is that I'm not one of these people that assume you're heterosexual or nobody else, because I don't know. Because people are in heterosexual drag all the time. But the point I want to make that's just as important is that Dr. Winkler, to make a point, asks you, what are we going to do with people like me? I'm not concerned about what you're going to do because you don't control me. I exist. I'm here. I'm doing what I'm going to do, and nothing you can do about it. So I'm not concerned about your perspective or what you think I should do and where I should go or where I should live and exist on the planet Earth. It's irrelevant what you think and what you consider along those lines. But it's a good question because people get to find out how you think. But I want to be real clear. It doesn't have nothing to do with what I'm going to do and not going to do. And that's true for a lot of us because we are here, we exist, and it's just we're part of the black family. And unlike in the recent past, people were repressed, people didn't say nothing. People are saying something now because there's been situations that occurred where it had to happen. Just like for us as African people, we couldn't take it no more. We couldn't take being repressed and tortured and silent. We had to say something. So that's true for same-gender loving people too. And the bottom line is some of that stuff is not functional, just like some of the stuff that's happening just for being black is not functional. Something that's happening as same-gender living people is not functional because we're not trained to be functional along these lines. That's why black people are more consumers than we are powerful. And I mean autonomously power, not powerful because
You
black
got a
people pay
white
us
man's
for it.
dick in your ass and in your
What?
I removed him. Yeah, he's disrespectful.
Yeah, and he also
I,
delusional because that ain't true.
oh,
He said something about a white man's dick in somebody's ass. You got the wrong one, bro.
yeah, that see, I apologize. Well, you know,
I get it.
Yeah,
I mean, are you kidding? This dude ain't the first one to do this.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I've heard
yeah,
it a million times.
yeah.
And the lack of logic that comes out of there, the anger, the rage, the starting off with rhetorical questions which are irrelevant before they get to their real agenda, which is to go off and be anti-homosexual. This is a cliche. It's nothing new. But thank goodness there's such thing as the conscious mind and the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And maybe the subconscious learned some things today.
Yeah. I and I know it's a tough conversation I think I'm hearing you articulate here that there is not something you don't expect due to the condition
Not at all.
that we find ourselves in. And I appreciate what you about to
I
say.
was gonna say completely expected.
Yeah, and I appreciate the because to me, I just want to ask the question because this is real to me. Like when I see when I see what people might call our brightest minds being usurped by white supremacy due to them seeing African-centered thought and Pan-Africanism as patriarchal and white
Or homophobic.
This is what they say: white, patriarchal, and homophobic. And I see this war going on. I'm just, I guess I guess I have like a final question. I guess, I'm wondering for those because it's really about those who really see this work, who, who 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 find it difficult to sit in the seat that you find yourself in. And again, I'm going back to what I said earlier. No matter what their sexual orientation is, because when I'm talking about my students and others, it's not that they are same gender loving all of them. It's just the way they've been trained with the LGBTQ plus, the liberal, the mainstream feminism, and all these type of other frameworks that has them create alliances with white frameworks and the people, or even if they feel like the alliance with black people is still utilizing white frameworks, and it takes them away from those race for even if they think that they're doing race first, they typically will pick every other identity over the race. And I'm curious to how do you stay settled with even this type of conversation happening and knowing that the race and being black is the primary fight as it pertains to this particular conversation and your frameworks in general.
Well, I think you asked me, if I'm not mistaken, something about how do I stay focused or involved, or how do I stay present
Yeah.
regardless of all this?
How do you stay? How do you, well present? How do you stay committed? How about that
Oh,
to the race
well, that's easy. I mean, I
versus getting usurped into white paradigms that seem to be sanctuaries?
okay. Who? That's a good question. Um, I am clear, and I have been for many, many years, what the difference is between fighting against white supremacy mythology toward minimizing barriers to black progress, and fighting against white supremacy mythology so I can be a part of the white team and be more adjacent. I hope that was a clear dichotomy, because on the surface, when you see black people out in front of a building with a sign saying no to racism, we assume they're all fighting for black people. But no, some of them are fighting for white access and white adjacency, and racism is in the way of that. And some of them are fighting for black power because they have a clear analysis about that black people are in a context of injustice, oppression, viciousness, harm, and they feel good enough about black people to want to fight against that. I'm on that side, by the way. Um, this gonna sound real hokey, and I'm not sure I've ever articulated it before. Oh, well, I'll just say this: when I was a kid, there was a movie that came out called "Lady Sings the Blues" that starred Diana Ross, and I was a damn near a baby when that song came out. But it was a song that really, really hit me called "Good Morning Heartache," and you may have heard it. But the last line of that song, Good Morning Heartache, after they finish singing all the lyrics, is Good Morning Heartache, sit down at the table. It's a familiar part of their life. So have a seat. And that's how I feel about heartbreak. Um, so that I have normalized that that's going to be a part of my experience in a hostile environment. I'm not um, I'm not disheveled by it. I'm not destabilized by this norm that's going to be in my life because of where I live and what happens to black people in this society. It's like, okay, I have a certain level of heartache. That's a norm that I have to live with because I'm not comfortable with the mistreatment and the anti-blackness and the white supremacy mythology and that whole war against black humanity. So else do I do? I mean, it's another proverb. I'm gonna mess it up. An African proverb that says, "Life is hard, so do the right thing." And what I mean by that is that life is difficult. So why should I uh, use my life to be passive and do nothing about the attacks on me and my people? That's hard too. These people who are looking for sanctuary that we've talked about earlier are trying to make it less hard. And they've internalized the anti-black they've internalized the black affirming option. They don't trust it because the larger message that has the most glamour and the most access to what we think is good in the society is doing what white folks do, not what black folks do.
Yeah.
So I have a very clear, crystal clear analysis about what's going on. And I choose to be on the side of decency, problem solving, and solutions because that's how I got to live my life. Because I have enough clarity to know that there's something that needs to be done. I've mentioned the heartbreaking part because the kind of commentary that this person makes that I'm familiar with is kind of heartbreaking because it's not helpful. They're not listening. It's a familiar point of view that comes from a familiar place that's typically personal to them that they will never articulate in terms of their what they say. So, but I'm good because I can say proudly that I'm not living my life in vain. I am a part of the progressive piece of the black experience. But my brother has an anti-homosexual, visceral issue. He's not alone. But I don't believe for a minute that what people think on the surface is all there is. Like I said, there is a subconscious.
Mm,
And if you keep talking, sometimes you can tap into that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've heard, we have someone else up before, but I think that interview you did with Brother Davon Love, you really speak to that, and you spoke about it today a bit too. And I just want to kind of reiterate it: the fear that drives some of our reactions um to same gender loving people being uh turned, on the show with Big on Love, you said basically infeminizing men. In other words, saying, did you just they're trying to make you a woman, they're trying to make you a girl or whatever it is, and you're gonna sign up for it. You said something like that. Like you're gonna sign
And
up
he
for it?
also, don't forget your thought, he also said something that's classic. He said that I had a white man stick on my ass.
Mm,
He said that.
yeah.
Ain't a white man stick on my ass. But what I'm trying to make is that's part of the metaphor. It's like you gonna voluntarily be fucked
That's what
in
you
a
said.
society that fucks you.
Yeah, that's what you said.
So people can be so caught up in that visceral reaction that they recreate something that they think I'm involved in because this is what their concern is. The absolute escalation and destruction of the black male, and you as a homosexual are feeding into that. Well, okay, fine. If you believe that, and if there's some element of truth in that somewhere on the planet, that's possible. That does occur. But
Mm,
in my case, that's not what's happening. And with a lot of single people, that's not what's happening. They are being who they are as part of the human possibility, and we exist. We always have, and there's all kinds of proof in Africa, ancient Africa, of our existence.
mhm,
And it's just part of the human experience. Being the same gender loving, bisexual, nuance, all that stuff is part of the experience, which does not stop there being a feminization of the black man agenda. That does
mhm.
not stop there being an emasculation of the black male agenda that's in the society, because it is. But in the midst of the agendas are people who naturally come out as they are.
Mm.
And we don't have enough education or conversation like what you and I are having on a scale to give people more consideration. What they hear more is the King James or Black Manhood Resurrection campaigns.
Quickly, what is this agenda? Did I ask you that earlier? Like, what is
What,
this
the gay agenda
feminization
or
of the black male agenda?
well, okay. During the lynching era, the blatant straight up lynching era, you know what they did with penis?
Castrated?
And put it in the mouth.
Hmm.
Unnecessary, crazy, quasi homoerotic mayhem. They already beat you and killed you. Then they're going to come off the penis and put it and play with it. For generations, our people watched and witnessed that. And males came up missing based on a very normalized, brutal act against black males.
Hmm.
And a lot of things that, like, what's the sister's name who talks about post traumatic slave syndrome?
The Georgia Brew.
Like Dr. Georgia Grew always says, there was no Dr. Winkless running around doing this 100 years of torture and mayhem. There was no mental reparations or repair sanctuary. It was just pure trauma on steroids for centuries. And the black male became the public demonstration of our irrelevance and our destruction. And effeminization and messing with black manhood, this is why I mentioned the castrations, has been a real phenomenon among us since we've been here. So there's some history informed but badly understood reactions to same gender loving people or feminine black men because of lack of healing from that experience.
Yeah.
And King James comes in and kind of exacerbates it all.
Yeah. We talked about so much today, Dr. Manago. Um, and I feel like some of my thoughts were just family. This is for the listening audience. Some of my thoughts have been kind of like a real heavy conversation that we must continue. Let me just say that, because we started speaking about about everything, and even the idea around Dr. Patricia Newton and Dr. Welsing and so on and so forth. There's a deeper space I would like to go in that conversation around this whole we won't do it tonight, but biological versus this and that, and the other, where it's none of that. It's just that simple. Although there's political agendas and all in a sense. And I also hear the brother saying like, well, what happened in ancient Africa or pre-colonial times and all that type of thing, and you're saying there's evidence, and then and I get it. Like, I've looked at it, and again, as I said earlier, I see people tend to stretch it in both directions. There's none, and there is overwhelming evidence.
Tell them to look up a picture of Akhenaten. We don't got time to get into it tonight, but look up Akhenaten, and a full body image of Akhenaten, who was King Tut's father.
You know what? I think that that right there could be a conversation in of it. How do you say it? I'm tired now. On its own. Let me just say that. But hold up. Let me add this first. Hold up. Are you still there?
Why are you doing that? Our perspective of gender and manhood is a defensive post-colonial perspective. It's not a natural African perspective.
Baba, are you there? And so, and I speak to that quite a bit. I thought that he wanted to come up, but I think that conversation needs to be had too, like gender, because I find on one instance, I clearly agree that it is not a African perspective. But then what happens with the LGBTQ plus frameworks, they then anachronize or usurp those LGBT models on Africa, which is also not African. And then so there's evidence of, I'm just going to be like really clear, like there's evidence of same gender loving orientation, what have you. Some of it is not even that beautiful. Some of it is very complex. Some of it is that some of it is even marriage by just like for property reasons, and some of it is because people actually participated. There's minor men. I'm saying we none of the, I think the community needs to have this conversation in a way. I'm talking about all sides, and you're probably one of the few people that I can have this conversation with, and we're not like really being triggered back and forth with one another. You know what I mean? Like these things are if you really want to deal with what happened in Africa, I'm talking about on both sides, it's going to be some upset people because we live in the mythology. But,
that's right.
Hold up. Is he back?
Robert?
Oh, that's Robert.
That's him again?
Yeah, that's Robert. I thought that was Baba. So
when I was on the Roland Martin show, which I was on for almost a decade, I kept telling him, man, we need to have a rational, sane, functional discussion about this issue because we're going into at least the 4th century in this country where we are apprehensive to have this conversation at scale. And we have same-gender loving people, bi, et cetera, being born black all the time, and they still live in this vortex of invisibility or King James-based oppression or manhood insecurity-based projection and attack. And we have to have a conversation. People love to go back to Africa, but guess what? In all parts of Africa, they've had this conversation. They've had this conversation at scale in other parts of Botswana and other parts of we're scared to do it because we're worried about stigmaphobia in white people.
People love to go to guess what? Yes. Hello.
Did you
Can you hear
say
me?
something? Yes, sir.
Okay, let me cut the TV down. What I was saying was this. Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. So even when I came across homosexuality in Egypt, I didn't want to believe it because I was fantasizing that didn't happen nowhere in Africa. But the thing about it, to be real, is this: you do not make a law for something that's not happening.
That's right.
And that was one of the laws they had in the negative confessions. Man should not sleep with man, etc. If that law, they made that law because it was happening. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I mean some contested, but yes, I
Yeah,
get the
because you don't make laws if
conversation.
nothing that happened. You can't say you can't drive drunk if nobody wasn't
Ever
drunk
drive
driving.
drunk?
Yes, sir.
You understand what I'm saying? That's all I
For
had to
those,
say.
especially for those who actually use that, and I think like for some who contest it, like for example, I have a cousin who say he was coming. He, he was coming for Umar. He told me we had and he was like, "Look, they put that in the 42 negative confessions." Like, so he's the same Gen 11 guy. So basically, he was really upset at Umar Johnson. Anybody who that the 42 negative confessions or what have you, which had that in there. But you know, it's a. I think the conversation needs to be had in a way that we can really process these things, not in ways just to I got you, because some people are having conversations in ways that they just want to be right. And
Right.
Just
I
heard
think my
one.
dear brother Robert Brand
He's one of those
is
people.
one of the people at this point that's having that conversation. Now, I don't have to agree with everything. I don't have to look. I try to look at the information for what it is. Period. And it hurts people on all the sides. Like again, it's very hard to have the conversation that yeah, look, as much as this stuff is not simple, and it's just not simple. But even let's say it.
To me, it's simple. I
For,
know it's not, but to me, it is.
yeah, I'm glad it's simple for you. If we could just be that simple for everyone else. But for what was I about to say? Okay, one of the things I've heard you say is that you're fair in some of your ways of posing questions. This is on the show with Dave on. You said so. Let's say your hypothesis is true. You said so. Let's say that and This is going back to some of the conversation I said earlier. Let's say you said these butchers or something. You said they say these men will be like these butchers are out here because some man has raped them or something. And you said they'd be like so they're mad at her for her sexual expression, perhaps, and not
The rape.
dealing with the grape, right?
The rape.
Yes.
Right.
Want me to mention that real quickly?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
What happened was this guy talked to me about all these bull daggers and all these lesbians haven't been raped, and that's why they're the way they are, and it's terrible that they're the way they are. And I said to him, well, but what about the rape? Why there's no critique of the rape?
And I think that's such a fair question because you're saying, okay, let that be true.
Now, I didn't say let that
No,
be
no,
true. I
no,
said
no. You say no, not let that be true. If that is, let's go with your hypothesis
right,
here,
exactly.
right? Let's go with your hypothesis. If that's true, then what? Like, so what about what has been done to them?
Right.
Right? And again, I want to be very clear. Earlier, I started the conversation out saying that, Dr. Newton's research, I'm not saying this is the way that people form their sexual orientation. I am saying I will argue and maintain that people have told me that they feel like their sexual orientation has been chosen for them due to their sexual encounters through molestation and other things. But I'm heterosexual or homosexual. I'm saying I've had people who say, well, this male has raped me and I'm a female. Now, because they raped me, I feel like they chose my orientation. And I've heard people say, as a young man, this male did this to me, and I feel like if that hadn't happened, okay. Then there's also, the whole bio. So I want to say, I think that we really have to have conversations, and be ready. We have to learn to be ready for these conversations. And I think we're past the time where we can continue to live in mythical land because I'm gonna ask the question again. So what do we do with our brothers and sisters? Are you going to like what are you saying to do? Just abandon them? And again, I have another question. So what becomes, let's say when I say let's say, I'm saying let's hypothetically, let's say all of what you're saying is true. What is the judge of what is not acceptable? Like, let's say a person using drugs. Now, do you abandon them? Is that European? Like what? Like, and I'm not trying to compare these two things, but the thing is, I mean, Dr. Naeem Akbar said something, and I think it's very profound. He says, "Come as you are." He says, "Look, you got a crack pipe in your pocket. You got this going on. You got that going on." He said, "We'll figure all that out when we get there. But this fight, first and foremost, is about our African consciousness."
That's right.
So, Dr. Manago, I'm going to ask you to kind of bring it all home. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate the regulation that you have. I appreciate, and one thing I would say that I pick up from you is that I think that what I see in you is exactly the type of work that is needed for us to really heal as a people. And I'm saying we all have a diverse way of identifying. We'll never change that. We're gonna always have diverse opinions and people that don't agree with you and all that. But I think we have to find ways to regulate ourselves and also be confident of who we are, how we are, and know that people are going to have their ideas, opinions, wrong, right, and different. And I don't know what it is that you're doing, but that's what I would like to frame up as a model of healing, especially for those brothers and sisters who have similar experiences or similar orientation or what have you. So, last final words, Doc.
I think it's important that we remember that we live in a society that's problematic for black people. It's problematic for all decent people, and all groups in this society are going through hell and dealing with survival and health and mental health challenges. But all the statistics read that there's a disproportionate problem among black people. And going on several generations into the society, we've learned to normalize, as I said earlier, anti-blackness so much that we're not even a critic of it. We don't even recognize it. And in the midst of all the frustration that comes from the misdirected rage that comes out of a whole landscape that's full of anti-black messaging, including the very language we speak in a dark day, and we can go on and on. We really have to do more critical thinking and culture affirmation, or CTCA. We really need to learn to take step back and look at where we live and what's going on, and stop shopping or escaping. You can do that too. I'm not saying it's don't shop and don't escape. Do enjoy yourself, but do what other groups do who are more successful. They have a good
Mm-hmm.
time, but they also take time to see to it that they're powerful and that they have community. And we used to do that. I mean, that's how Black Wall Street was built. That's how the U Street, DC, was built.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore back in the day was built. We used to be, everybody's heard the cliche that before we got in white neighborhoods or and all that we were more unified. It's true, but we were also unconsciously taught that being black wasn't good enough, and that's why our children from the 30s up until now still choose the white dog. We have work to do. We have intentional work to do, which is why I developed a project called Black Intentional Parenting, where we intentionally raise our children and we intentionally create safe space for us to discover ourselves and learn to love ourselves in our own image. Now, there's techniques and strategies that I could talk about at some point, or people can get my coming book that talks about it, but we have work to do. And we need to stop being mad at each other for being dysfunctional. That's like being mad at somebody who just got hit by a car and they're limping, and you mad at them for limping. Or they just got hit,
Yeah.
and we've been hit.
Yeah.
So some of us get mad and judge each other
Mm-hmm.
for the consequences of this attack, and we got to do better. We don't all mean any harm. Even I don't even think the brother Robert. I think that Robert was speaking because he cares about black people.
Yeah.
I think he was speaking because he really wants the best for black people.
Hmm.
He don't want us molested or, from his perspective, homosexuals and teaching us to do stuff that's not beneficial to us. I believe he's well intended. However, frankly, some of his comments were the sign of not having a lot of information on this issue. And even his approach to trying to talk about it was based on preparing to attack me instead of engaging me. But it's the way it is. But I want to close by saying that we really need to invest in creating safe space for black diversity, not to agree with everybody, but to create a possibility for progress. Because, like I've said before in other shows, okay, you think the homosexual is bad and all this other kind of stuff. Well, why don't you invest in having a healthier black community so we can see what would really happen
Hmm.
if the palate was healthy?
Mm.
I mean, you don't know what's going to happen if his palate is unhealthy. You might be right, you might be wrong. Of course, I think you're wrong. But the point I'm trying to make is that if we all work toward creating a healthy black community and allowing it to be a place to actually persevere and develop, we'll see how people would come out. But right now, people are coming out into a mess,
Mm.
and we need to fix that mess.
No, no, I appreciate that. Again, I appreciate even, you know, you say, all right, let's test the hypothesis.
That's right.
You know, I mean, let's do it. But, I think you're wrong, but let's test it.
Yeah,
And I think we need to do more of that.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
And rather than allow our theories to
Have us bashing each other.
bash each other. Because what is it like? Again, I keep asking the question: what you gonna do? I mean, like,
And you don't get a good answer most of the time.
I didn't get one.
Well,
Yes,
that's not a good answer.
and I'm
Not getting
saying
one.
like, what's the reason they get so upset? Like, why would I turn down an ally, ally? You know, the words that people use. Why would I turn down my brother and sister who's fighting for the black cause?
Because I've been raped and I haven't resolved it.
Mm,
I've been molested. I haven't, been, I haven't resolved it.
mm,
I've been called punks and faggots because people assumed I was homosexual, and clearly it was a negative thing because I was bashed for it, even though I'm not. But I resent the bashing, so I'm going to take it out on homosexuals. I can't tell you all the narratives I've heard when I got down and peeled the onion back to find out what was really going on, like the leader who played the violin and these other people in terms of why they're really doing what they're doing. Because that leader admitted it, and they had never even thought about it before until I created the space for that during that conversation in terms of what their motivation really was. And I'm telling you, I'm sure there's exceptions to everything, but the majority of people that I've engaged with depth who have similar reactions to people about this issue, they're struggling with it one way or the other. Not saying they're all same gender loving,
mm-hmm.
but they could have been abused or raped or something like that.
And I
And that's typically what's going on.
and I appreciate you even visiting or exploring, although statistically we can look at things, but just saying that past the statistics, there's reasons why people do what they do. They respond how they respond and think and react in the ways that they react.
And are visceral
And it's
and
visceral.
unable to simply have a conversation respectfully and go back and forth about the issue because we apparently both have ideas. When you start talking about people having white dicks up their ass, stuff like that, that doesn't create the space for real transformative discussion.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
Hmm.
And I think that on a subconscious basis or somewhere among the spectrum of consciousness, when people do that, they're trying to injure. They're trying to insult. They're trying to act out in some kind of a vicious way because of their perspective or they claim what their perspective is on the issue. But when you're talking to Cleo Manago, that stuff it doesn't rock my world.
Mm.
I get it why it's happening.
So again, thank you, Doc. The Cleo Manago family conversation today: race first models of sexuality and gender. Is there any like how they follow you, how they connect with you, all that type of thing?
My name is Cleo Manago, and I'm under that name, whether it's Instagram or Google or Facebook or whatever it's called. I'm always Cleo Manago. Sometimes I'm Cleo.Manago. But if you go to those places and type my name, I hope your computer don't explode, but you'll see a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So
Thank you for inviting me to the show. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking the invitation. We gotta have these conversations, family. In my work, around FBA, ADOS, continental Africans.
I want to be in that conversation.
You say you do?
Yes.
Okay. You want to be in that conversation?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm inviting you back.
No problem.
And yeah, definitely. I want to hear your thoughts. So I'm gonna book you. To me, we have to have these conversations, because I see the war for our minds, the war on our minds, and there's nothing more disturbing than seeing our brothers and sisters finding, what do you call it? You called it what's the word? Sanctuary in these white spaces. I'm saying wherever. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen, and that's definitely a lot of healing. And there are things and reactions and visceral responses and just black and white thinking and all that type of thing that is indicative that there's some unresolved something. And I can give you a number of reasons, number of origins or etiologies or what have you, perhaps what is going on. But one thing I know, it's something unresolved. And lots of times, just the nature of being in a white society, and I like how you said white supremacy, that's run by white supremacy ideology, is that it can cause major trauma.
It does.
And it can have you perceiving threat when there's no threat, and have you thinking something is not a threat when it's a threat, which is very indicative of trauma.
That's right.
The fact that even some of our brothers and sisters who are SGL, men and women fighting, whatever, like males versus females, you got the manosphere, then you got the red pill, and you got all this stuff going. I got a person that wants to come in and talk to y'all about the red pill coming up soon, because even and I see it seeping. I love black male studies to a degree, but I see where some aspects of it is getting a little bit, they're kind of like overcorrecting and becoming more of a reaction to feminism than what I think the origins of what black male study is intended to be. So again, I do this because I see these different ways that we identify, show up, exist, being weaponized against us. And we gotta push back against that. And I say it has to be, no matter what and how many ways you can slice your identities up, it has to be led by a race first identity. Family, please like, share, subscribe, leave respectful comments. If they get out of hand, I'm going to have to erase them on this one, family. I just going to let you know. You can disagree, but let's be respectful, and that requires us to regulate ourselves. Until next time, family, I'm going to say peace and power.
When you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind back.
Generalized black woman is doing this and getting this. That is that is irresponsible.
No,
when you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind
showing
back.
me,
Black and proud. Claim your
I agree,
Africanness, black
because
and
I
proud.
think
I'm telling
that
you.
if
When you claim your
as a
Africanness, you're going to
person
get your
who
mind
has
back.
a page,
what is the status of people
Claim your
with half
Africanness, black and proud. I'm
FBA?
telling you. When you claim your Africanness, you're going to get your mind back.
That's why I was laughing, because
Black and proud. Claim your Africanness, black
I'm
and
not saying
proud.
the
I'm telling
framework
you.
doesn't do a thing, but
Become a part of it.
we've been
Embrace it.
forward to black men
Become a
being the
part of it.
masters being in the control, we
become a part of it.
Only
Embrace it.
That those to me one of the
Become a
best
part
stories I've
of
ever
it.
heard.
Embrace it. When you claim your
have
African, you're
mastered
gonna get your mind
that
back.
mental growth takes
Black
place.
and
You've
proud.
been
Claim
misled
your
by
African.
leadership,
Black
for
and
instance,
proud.
that
I'm
think
telling
that
you.
you can consume.
When you claim your Africanness, you're gonna get your mind back. Black and proud. Claim your African. Black and proud. I'm telling you.